Hello everyone, and welcome to the Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Naruto was the SSS-Rank sage who couldn't be leveled. Naruto x Freya x Ryuu Lion DanMachi. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Sage Beyond Measure. The air shifted and crackled with an energy foreign to this world. Scattered leaves spiraled upward around the unconscious figure sprawled in a clearing just beyond Orario's eastern wall. Golden hair caught the morning light, 6 distinctive whisker-like marks crossing tanned cheeks that twitched as consciousness gradually returned. Naruto Uzumaki's eyes snapped open, immediately registering unfamiliar stars fading against the dawn sky. Not the stars he knew. Not the sky he recognized. His body reacted before his mind fully awakened, muscles coiling as he launched himself into a defensive crouch. Kunai materializing in his hand from a hidden pouch. Silence greeted him. No enemies. No immediate threats. Just the rustling of strange trees and distant sounds of a city awakening. What the hell happened? He muttered, memories fragmenting as he tried to piece together his last moments in Konoha. A mission. Something about dimensional disturbances. Kakashi's concerned expression as chakra readings went haywire around the village perimeter. Then, nothing but swirling darkness and the sensation of being unmade and reconstructed atom by atom. The kunai disappeared back into its pouch as Naruto closed his eyes, drawing upon the natural energy around him. Sage mode activated with practiced ease, orange pigmentation spreading around his eyes as he extended his senses outward. What he felt nearly broke his concentration. This world's natural energy was different, richer somehow, more volatile. It flowed into him with an eagerness that bordered on overwhelming, as if it had been waiting for someone who could properly channel it. Most disturbing of all, he could sense no other chakra signatures anywhere, only a strange power unlike anything he'd encountered before. Definitely not Fire Country, he concluded, releasing Sage mode and taking stock of his physical condition. His Sage cloak was intact, as were all his weapons and supplies. The reassuring weight of his headband remained firmly in place. Physically, he seemed unchanged by whatever had transported him here. A distant roar echoed through the trees, followed by the unmistakable sounds of combat. Naruto's body moved instinctively toward the disturbance, years of shinobi training taking over. He leapt into the canopy, finding the trees sturdy enough to support his weight as he bounded from branch to branch with silent efficiency. The scene that greeted him at the edge of the forest defied immediate comprehension. 3 humans. No, not entirely human. One had prominent animal ears protruding from their head while another possessed distinctly pointed ears. They battled what appeared to be a massive boar with crimson eyes and tusks that gleamed like polished metal. The creature stood nearly 3 times taller than a normal boar, with smoke curling from its nostrils with each enraged breath. "Fall back, Maris," shouted the tallest of the 3, a woman with short ropped hair who wielded a spear with practiced precision. "Its hide is too thick for your daggers." The youngest-looking fighter, a girl with distinctive rabbit ears, jumped backward as the monster's tusk missed her by inches. "We can't retreat now. The guild needs these monster crystals by sundown." Naruto observed their fighting style with a tactician eye. These weren't shinobi. Their movements lacked the chakra enhancement he was accustomed to seeing, yet they demonstrated strength and speed beyond normal human capability. They fought well together, clearly experienced in coordinating their attacks. But the monster seemed unusually resilient. The creature charged suddenly, catching the 3rd fighter, an elegant figure with pointed ears, with a glancing blow that sent them spinning into a tree with bone-crushing force. Blood spattered across the ground as they slumped, weapon dropping from limp fingers. "Lycos!" The rabbit-eared girl screamed, her momentary distraction leaving her vulnerable as the boar pivoted with surprising agility and charged toward her. Naruto's body moved before conscious thought completed. A flash of yellow and orange intercepted the charge, his palms streaked, ricking the boar's forehead with precise force. Natural energy surged through his arm as Sage mode activated instantaneously, the impact sending the massive creature skidding backward before it collapsed. Stunned by the perfectly balanced force. "What the?" The spear-wielding woman stood frozen, her weapon half raised as she stared at the newcomer who had appeared seemingly from nowhere. Naruto didn't waste time with explanations. Your friend's badly injured, he stated, nodding toward the fallen elf while keeping his eyes on the temporarily incapacitated monster. How do you typically finish these creatures? The rabbit-eared girl recovered first, blinking away her shock. We need to target the crystal in its forehead, but its hide. Got it. Naruto formed a familiar hand sign, and perfect copies of himself appeared beside him in puffs of smoke. The fighters' expressions shifted from surprise to utter disbelief. Impossible, whispered the spear wielder. No magic works that quickly without a chant. The original Naruto turned toward the injured party member. My clones will handle the monster. Show me your friend's injuries. As his shadow clones engaged the recovering boar with coordinated precision, Naruto knelt beside the fallen fighter. The elf's breathing came in shallow gasps, blood seeping from a gash across their side where armor had buckled inward. Internal bleeding was likely, judging from the pallor of their already fair skin. I'm not a medical ninja, Naruto explained, placing his hands gently over the wound, but I can stabilize them. We'll need proper healing after. He closed his eyes, channeling a careful measure of chakra, just enough to stimulate cellular regeneration without overwhelming the unfamiliar physiology. The technique was Sakura had insisted he learn after the war, a basic field treatment for emergencies. He'd never been as skilled with medical jutsu as his pink-haired teammate, but the fundamentals were sound. Behind him, a thunderous crack signaled his clones had successfully targeted the monster's weakness. A crystalline shattering sound followed, then silence. Crystal secured, one clone reported, Aproac. Hing with a glittering stone the size of a man's fist. The stone pulsed with an internal light that reminded Naruto vaguely of concentrated chakra. The rabbit-eared girl stared, mouth agape. You killed a level 3 monster with your bare hands. And you can duplicate yourself. And now you're healing without a potion or healing spell. Her voice trailed off as she struggled to process what she was witnessing. That's not possible, the spear wielder insisted, her grip tightening nervously around her weapon. Even high-level adventurers can't. She stopped mid-sentence as the injured elf's breathing noticeably steadied. Color returning to their face. They'll live, Naruto confirmed, standing and dissipating his clones with a casual gesture. But we should get them proper medical attention. I've only stopped the internal bleeding temporarily. He looked between the two conscious fighters, finally registering their continued expressions of shock. I guess I should introduce myself. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, and I'm not exactly from around here. The understatement hung in the air like a tangible thing. Clearly, the spear wielder responded dryly, though her stance had relaxed marginally. I'm Ansel. The rabbit is Maris, and our unconscious friend is Lycos. She gestured toward the city walls visible in the distance. We were on a simple monster hunting expedition for the guild when that abnormal appeared from nowhere. It shouldn't have been this close to the city walls. Naruto nodded, processing the unfamiliar terminology while gathering more context clues. Guild, abnormal. I take it monster hunting is normal where we are. Maris tilted her head, ears twitching in confusion. You don't know about the guild. Or the dungeon. Where exactly are you from? That's complicated, Naruto answered truthfully. Let's just say I'm very lost and leave it at that for now. How about we focus on getting your friend some help? Ansel studied him with increasing suspicion, but pragmatism won out. Fine, we'll take Lycos to our familia's healer. You're coming with us, though. Whatever you are, the guild will want to know about someone with your abilities. Naruto didn't argue. Following these locals was his best chance of understanding this strange new world he'd found himself in. He gently lifted the injured elf, noting how light they felt despite their height. Lead the way. As they approached the massive walls of Orario, Naruto absorbed every detail with trained observation. The architecture was unlike anything in the Five Nations, a blend of ANC and stonework and more advanced construction that reminded him somewhat of Spring Country. People bustled about in clothing styles he'd never seen, speaking a language that somehow he understood perfectly despite its unfamiliarity. Most striking were the inhabitants themselves. Humans mingled with people bearing animal features, ears, tails, scales, and other characteristics that in his world LD have signaled a summoning contract or Kekkei Genkai. Here, They appeared to be distinct races coexisting, albeit with visible social stratification. The guards at the gate gave Naruto suspicious glances but waved the party through after Ansel showed them some kind of identification badge. The injured Lycos had regained semi-consciousness, murmuring incoherently as Naruto carried them through streets that grew progressively more crowded. "What's that massive tower?" Naruto asked, nodding toward a structure that dominated the city skyline, rising impossibly high above all other buildings. "That's Babel," Maris replied, her earlier wariness partially replaced by a guide's pride. "It sits atop the dungeon entrance. All adventurers pass through there to reach the lower floors where the stronger monsters appear." "Dungeon. You mentioned that before." Ansel gave him a sidelong glance. "You really aren't from anywhere nearby, are you? The dungeon is the source of monsters, magic stones, and most of the world's magical energy. Adventurers like us form contracts with gods through our familias to gain the strength to explore it and collect materials." "Gods?" Naruto's stride faltered momentarily. "You mean actual deities?" Quote, "Of course," Maris replied as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "They descended from the upper world long ago to live among mortals. Our goddess Nemesis leads our familia." Naruto's mind raced with implications. A world with active gods walking among mortals, organized monster hunting, and strange powers that weren't chakra-based but seemed to serve similar functions. The parallels and differences were both fascinating and concerning. "We're here," Ansel announced, stopping before a modest compound bearing a symbol reminiscent of balanced scales. "Our familia isn't large or wealthy, but our healer is one of the best in the city." Inside, they were greeted by a flurry of activity as other familia members rushed to assist with the injured Lycos. Naruto found himself guided to a side chamber where an elderly human with wizened features but clear eyes assessed him with unnerving intensity. "So you're the one Ansel mentioned in her message," the old man said, circling Naruto slowly. "The stranger with impossible abilities who saved our expedition team." "I just did what anyone would have," Naruto replied, uncomfortable with the scrutiny. The old man laughed, a surprisingly youthful sound. "Modest too. Interesting. I'm Karis, advisor to Goddess Nemesis. And you are quite the puzzle, young man." "Naruto Uzumaki. And I'm trying to figure out where exactly I am and how to get home." Karis gestured for Naruto to sit. "You're in Orario, the greatest city in the world, center of the gods, presence on the lower world and home to the dungeon." He poured a cup of tea from a waiting pot and slid it across the table. "The question is, where is home for you? Your clothing, speech patterns, and abilities match no nation or race known to us." Naruto accepted the tea, grateful for the familiar ritual even in unfamiliar surroundings. "I'm from Konohagakure, the village hidden in the leaves. It's one of the 5 great shinobi nations. Though I guess that doesn't mean anything to you." "Indeed not," Karis confirmed. "And these abilities you demonstrated, the duplicates of yourself, the healing without magic, ninjutsu, you and medical techniques using chakra, the life energy that flows through all living things where I come from." Naruto decided that basic honesty was his best approach, while reserving the details of his full capabilities. "I was investigating strange energy disturbances when something went wrong. Next thing I knew, I woke up in your forest." Karis stroked his beard thoughtfully. "Fascinating. In all my centuries advising Goddess Nemesis, I've never heard of such a transportation between worlds." "The implications are centuries," Naruto interrupted, setting down his teacup. "You're immortal, blessed by the goddess," Karis explained with a dismissive wave. "Many senior familia members receive longevity as part of their blessing. Not immortality like the gods themselves, but substantial extension of life." The door slid open before Naruto could process this new information. The woman who entered radiated an aura of quiet authority that immediately commanded attention. Her features were classically beautiful yet stern, dark hair cascading down her back in a simple braid. She wore no ostentatious ornaments, just simple clothing of exceptional quality, with a pendant bearing the same balanced scales symbol visible on the compound's entrance. "Goddess Nemesis," Karis greeted, rising respectfully. Naruto stood as well, instinctively recognizing power when he saw it. This wasn't just chakra or the natural energy he sensed earlier. This was something more fundamental, as if reality itself bent slightly around this woman's presence. "So this is our mysterious visitor," she stated. Her voice melodious yet commanding. Her eyes, Naruto noticed, were mismatched, one deep blue, one golden brown, and seemed to peer straight through his defenses. I've just come from seeing Lycos. They will recover fully, thanks to your intervention. I'm glad I could help, Naruto replied sincerely. Nemesis circled him slowly, much as Karis had done, but her assessment felt more invasive somehow. As if she were seeing layers of him invisible to others. You carry power unlike any I've encountered in my divine existence, she observed. Not a blessing from any god I recognize, yet structured and controlled with precision. She stopped directly before him. Would you permit me to examine your status? I find myself curious. Naruto hesitated, unfamiliar with the request. My status. Karis intervened smoothly. The goddess wishes to see the fundamental nature of your being, what we call your status. It would require a small ceremony to reveal the blessing upon your back, which only gods can read in its entirety. It's harmless, Nemesis added, and would help us understand how best to assist you. In return for saving our familia members, we would offer you shelter and guidance while you determine your path forward in our world. The practical benefits outweighed Naruto's instinctive caution. Understanding this world's power system might provide clues about returning home. All right, what do I need to do? Remove your upper garments and lie face down, Nemesis instructed, producing a small crystal vial containing a red liquid. This ceremony is typically formed when a god accepts someone into their familia, creating a bond that grants the blessed certain abilities. I'm not joining your familia, Naruto clarified, removing his sage cloak and shirt. The spiral seal on his abdomen became visible, drawing immediate attention. What remarkable markings, Karis murmured, leaning closer to examine the seal. Is this the source of your powers? Part of them, Naruto answered vaguely as he positioned himself as instructed. It's a seal containing an important legacy. Nemesis nodded thoughtfully. We all carry legacies, mortal and divine alike. She uncorked the vial. This will feel cool against your skin. The liquid that dripped onto Naruto's back did indeed feel cool, but also strangely energizing, as if it recognized something within him and responded to it. He felt the goddess place her palm between his shoulder blades and heard her intake of breath sharply. Impossible, she whispered after a long moment of silence. Goddess, Karis inquired, concerned by her reaction. Nemesis withdrew her hand slowly, as if reluctant to break contact. In all my existence, I have never. She paused, composing herself. Your status, Naruto Uzumaki, cannot be measured by our standards. Where numbers and classifications should appear, there is only an inscription in a language I cannot decipher, surrounding a single designation, SSS-Rank Sage. What does that mean? Naruto asked, sitting up and reaching for his shirt. It means, Nemesis explained, her mismatched eyes intense, that you exist outside our hierarchical system. All adventurers in our world progress through levels as they grow stronger, from level 1 upward through great achievement and blessing. The highest recorded level in history was a level 9 hero of ancient times. She gestured toward him. Your status registers as immeasurable, as if our system cannot comprehend your nature. Karis looked pale. Goddess, should we inform the guild? Or the other deities? Not yet, Nemesis decided after a moment's consideration. But word will spread regardless. The arrival of one such as this will not go unnoticed for long. She addressed Naruto directly. You present an unprecedented situation, Sage Uzumaki. I offer you temporary sanctuary within our familia's compound while you acclimate to our world, with no obligation beyond basic courtesy. Naruto recognized both the generosity of the offer and its practical advantages for Nemesis. Having him under observation would satisfy her divine curiosity while controlling information about his abilities. It aligned with his own needs for the moment. I accept your hospitality with gratitude, he replied formally, falling back on diplomatic protocols Kakashi had drilled into him after the war. Quote, and I'll help your familia while I'm here, in return. Nemesis smiled, an expression that transformed her severe features into something truly divine. Excellent. Karis will show you to quarters and provide appropriate attire for Orario. Tomorrow, we shall introduce you properly to our city. After she departed, Karis led Naruto through the compound to a small but comfortable room overlooking an interior garden. Rest well, Sage Uzumaki, I suspect your days of anonymity in our world are numbered. Left alone, Naruto created a shadow clone to maintain watch while he entered a meditative state, attempting to contact Kurama. The familiar mental landscape formed around him, but the Nine-Tails' usual chamber remained disturbingly empty. The connection existed but felt stretched thin, as if spanning impossible distance. Kurama, he called into the echoing emptiness. Can you hear me? Only the faintest rumble returned, like thunder from beyond the horizon, acknowledgement without communication. Whatever had transported Naruto had strained even the profound bond with his tailed beast partner. Emerging from meditation, Naruto gazed through the window at the unfamiliar stars above this strange world. Looks like I'm on my own for now, he murmured, settling into rest and prepare for whatever tomorrow might bring. Dawn brought renewed commotion to the Nemesis Familia compound. Naruto, already awake and performing morning training exercises in the garden, observed with interest as members rushed about with unusual purpose. His shadow clone, maintained throughout the night, reported nothing suspicious beyond occasional curious observers peeking into his quarters. Ansel found him completing a series of katas that incorporated natural energy manipulation without fully entering sage mode, a technique he developed to maintain sensitivity to his surroundings. The entire familia is buzzing about you, she stated without preamble, leaning against a cherry tree that reminded Naruto painfully of home. Rumors claim you're everything from a forgotten demigod to an experiment escaped from Daedalus Street. Which do you believe? Naruto asked, completing his movement with practiced precision. Ansel shrugged. I believe what I saw. You move like no adventurer I've encountered, use abilities without chanting or visible magic circles, and your presence alone was enough to make our goddess lose her legendary composure. Her eyes narrowed slightly. The question is whether you represent an opportunity or a threat to Orario's stability. I'm just trying to find my way home, Naruto replied honestly. No interest in disrupting your world's balance. Intention rarely dictates outcome, Ansel observed cryptically. Karis sent me to bring you. The goddess has an proper introduction to Orario society, starting with registration at the guild. The clothing provided for Naruto struck a balance between practical and distinctive, sturdy pants and boots suitable for combat. Layered tunics in muted orange and black that echoed his preferred palette while blending with local styles, and a short cloak that concealed most of his weapons pouches. He kept his headband prominently displayed, the spiral leaf symbol a reminder of his origins and loyalties. The guild manages all official adventurer activity, Ansel explained as they navigated Orario's bustling morning streets. They issue identification, track monster populations, exchange magic stones for currency, and mediate disputes between familias. Naruto absorbed the information while cataloging potential escape routes, defensible positions, and environmental hazards, shinobi habits too ingrained to abandon even in apparently peaceful surroundings. The city's layout revealed much about its society. Distinct districts catering to different social classes, communal spaces where races mingled freely, and the ever-present shadow of Babel Tower looming over everything. What's that district? He asked, indicating an area where the architecture took on distinctly different characteristics, elegant spires and delicate archways contrasting with the sturdy pragmatism of surrounding neighborhoods. Gekai, Ansel replied, the divine residential district where many gods maintain their earthly residences. Ordinary mortals enter by invitation only, though high-level adventurers often receive such privileges. At the mention of high-level adventurers, Naruto noticed pedestrians moving aside respectfully for a small group walking confidently down the main thoroughfare. Their equipment was noticeably superior to average citizens, with materials that seemed to shimmer with contained power. Loki Familia elites, Ansel murmured, subtly indicating they should give the group wide berth. Oh, nay of the most powerful familias in Orario. The blonde swordswoman is Ace Wallenstein, known as the Sword Princess, a top-tier level 6 adventurer. Naruto studied the swordswoman with professional interest. Her movements revealed consummate training and battle awareness, even in casual walking. She reminded him somewhat of Samui from Cloud, economy of motion masking lethal capability. What surprise! Him was the flicker of emptiness he detected behind her composed expression, a hollowness he recognized from his own reflection in younger days. Their eyes met briefly across the crowded street. Naruto felt a flash of recognition. not of his identity, but of his nature. This A's Wallenstein instantly categorized him as a fellow warrior, her hand instinctively shifting slightly closer to her sword. He offered a small nod of professional acknowledgement, which she returned almost imperceptibly before continuing onward. "Did you just exchange greetings with the Sword Princess?" Ansel asked I.N.C. redulously once the Loki familia passed. "Just professional courtesy between fighters," Naruto replied casually. "She seems interesting." Ansel stared at him. "Interesting. She's one of Orario's most famous adventurers. Men literally duel each other for the chance to speak with her." "Fame doesn't necessarily reflect a person's true worth," Naruto commented, thinking of his own journey from village pariah to war hero. "Though I can tell she's earned her reputation through hard work." The guild headquarters proved to be a substantial building near Babel Tower, bustling with adventurers submitting reports, exchanging monster crystals for currency, and gathering information about dungeon conditions. The organizational efficiency impressed Naruto, reminding him of Konoha's mission assignment systems. Inside, Karis awaited them, deep in conversation with a half-elven woman whose professional demeanor and formal attire marked her as a guild official. She looked up as they approached, green eyes widening slightly as they assessed Naruto. "Guild advisor Aina Tool," Karis introduced. "May I present Naruto Uzumaki, the individual I mentioned in my preliminary report." "Welcome to the guild, Mr. Uzumaki," she greeted, professionalism masking obvious curiosity. "Your situation is unprecedented in our records." "That seems to be the common reaction," Naruto noted with a wry smile. Aina led them to a private consultation room where scrolls and registration materials had been prepared. Normally, adventurers register under their god's familia, receive a status blessing, and progress through levels by defeating monsters and completing quests, she explained. "Your circumstances require adaptive measures. Goddess Nemesis has already confirmed he cannot receive a conventional status blessing." Karis elaborated. "His power registers as SSS-Rank Sage, with no standard parameters." Aina's composure slipped momentarily. Well, we'll need to create a special classification." She shuffled through her documents. "We'll register you as an independent specialist, a designation typically reserved for support personnel who work across multiple familias." "That works for me," Naruto agreed, appreciating the pragmatic solution. "However," Aina continued, her tone becoming more official, "the guild must verify capabilities before issuing credentials. R.S. Standard assessment involves a controlled dungeon expedition. You want me to demonstrate my abilities by fighting monsters," Naruto clarified. "Precisely." Aina pushed to form forward. "With observe R.S. from both the guild and the Nemesis Familia to document your capabilities. For safety protocols, and to satisfy curiosity," Naruto added with understanding. "I have no objections, provided my techniques remain my own intellectual property." Aina blinked, clearly not expecting such sophisticated negotiation. "That's an unusual request, but acceptable under Guild Regulation 17.3 regarding unique adventurer skills." She made a notation on the form. "The assessment can be conducted tomorrow morning, using the guild's private training facility within Babel Tower." As they completed the necessary paperwork, Naruto sensed a subtle shift in the atmosphere, a prickling awareness that raised the fine hairs on the back of his neck. Years of ninja training had honed his perception of hostile intent or focused observation, and someone was definitely watching him with unusual intensity. He casually scanned the room while continuing his conversation with Aina, using peripheral vision to identify potential observers. The source revealed itself moments later, a striking elven woman with teal hair partially observing them from behind a support column. Her stance suggested combat training, and the way she positioned herself to maintain maximum situational awareness marked her as more than a casual onlooker. More interesting was what Naruto sensed beneath her outward composure, a complex mixture of wariness, curiosity, and something darker. Loss, perhaps, or grief meticulously controlled. She reminded him of Anbu operatives after particularly difficult missions, functioning perfectly while carrying invisible wounds. When their registration concluded and they prepared to leave, Naruto deliberately took a route that would pass near the observing elf. He didn't act Knowledge her directly but projected an openness to interaction if she chose to initiate it. The decision was momentarily placed in her hands. She surprised him by stepping forward directly into their path. Her movement fluid and graceful despite its deliberate confrontational positioning. Nemesis Familia, she addressed Karis with formal neutrality, completely ignoring Naruto. Your expedition reported an abnormal monster near the eastern wall yesterday. News travels quickly, Karis observed carefully. Yes, an unusual level 3 Minotaur appeared outside its proper dungeon floor range. The situation was handled. The elf's eyes finally shifted to Naruto, studying him with clinical detachment. By your new associate, I understand. Using methods unknown to Orario's adventurers. Naruto met her gaze directly. You seem well informed about yesterday's events. The guild maintains surveillance of monster activities near city borders, she replied smoothly. Ryuu Lion, I work at the hostess of fertility when not conducting independent investigations. Her name triggered immediate recognition for Naruto. This was one of the women mentioned in the dimensional disturbance reports he'd been investigating in Konoha. The coincidence seemed increasingly unlikely to be random chance. Naruto Uzumaki, he introduced himself, extending his hand in greeting. Ryu hesitated fractionally before accepting the handshake. Her grip firm and controlled. The brief contact confirmed Naruto's assessment. Her calluses and strength spoke of years wielding weapons, while the precise control of pressure revealed disciplined training. Your intervention saved lives, she acknowledged, withdrawing her hand. But unusual abilities attract dangerous attention in Orario. Some gods collect exceptional mortals like trinkets for their amusement. I appreciate the warning, Naruto replied genuinely. I'm still learning how this world operates. Something flickered across Ryu's expression. Surprise at his candor, perhaps. The hostess of fertility serves excellent food and maintains a strict non-violence policy. If you seek neutral ground to learn about Orario society, you would be welcome there. The invitation sounded almost reluctant, yet sincere. I might take you up on that offer, Naruto responded with a smile. After I've completed guild registration tomorrow. Ryu nodded once, then addressed Karis again. Watch the eastern approaches carefully. That abnormal shouldn't have appeared so close to the surface. Without waiting for a response, she departed with the same fluid efficiency that marked her arrival. Interesting, Karis remarked once she was beyond earshot. Ryu Lion rarely engages with strangers, especially newcomers to Orario. Who is she exactly? Naruto asked, watching her disappear into the crowd. A mystery herself, Ansel replied. Rumored to be a high-level adventurer who survived some catastrophe years ago. Works as a simple waitress now, but occasionally takes on monster subjugation quests independently. The guild respects her enough to tolerate her unusual status. Another puzzle piece in this increasingly complex world, Naruto thought, and somehow connected to the dimensional anomalies he'd been investigating. The coincidence was too specific to dismiss. Their return to the Nemesis Familia compound took a circuitous route through Orario's market district, allowing Naruto to observe daily life in this strange city. The variety of races interacting peacefully impressed him. Humans alongside animal-featured demi-humans, elves with their distinctive features, diminutive palums, and massive figures he learned were called boas and Sheanthropes, depending on their animal characteristics. Most striking was the casual presence of gods among mortals. Naruto identified several by the distinctive aura they projected, similar to Nemesis but each with unique qualities that seemed to reflect their divine domains. They adopt mortal appearances and behaviors while retaining an unmistakable otherness that set them apart. The gods descended from the upper realms centuries ago, Karis explained when Naruto inquired. The Y claimed boredom with divine perfection and fascination with mortal struggles. Each established a familia, a family of chosen mortals granted blessings to explore the dungeon and participate in what the gods call their game. Naruto's expression darkened slightly. They view mortal lives as entertainment. Some more than others, Karis acknowledged. Goddess Nemesis represents justice and balance. She takes her responsibilities toward mortals seriously. Others, he trailed off, gesturing subtly toward a flamboyantly dressed deity surrounded by adoring followers. Some treat our familia members as disposable playthings. The discussion paused as they passed a magnificent tower rising from an elegant estate. Unlike the utilitarian Babel Tower, this structure combined beauty and intimidation in equal measure. Its white marble exterior gleaming in the afternoon sun. Folkvanger, Ansel whispered, lowering her voice despite their distance. Home of the Freya familia, perhaps the most powerful in Orario. Naruto studied the tower with interest. Another deity's residence. Goddess Freya, Karis confirmed. Deity of beauty, love, and war in equal measure. Her familia comprises the strongest collection of high-level adventurers in the city, and her influence extends far beyond Orario's walls. As if summoned by their discussion, a figure appeared at one of the tower's high balconies, a woman of such extraordinary beauty that even at this distance, her appearance caused pedestrians to stop and stare upward. Silver-white hair caught the light like spun moonbeams, framing features too perfect to be mortal. More significant than her beauty was the sudden, intense focus Naruto felt directed at him, as if those distant eyes had instantly located him among thousands and now examined him with uncommon interest. A strange sensation washed over him, not genjutsu exactly, but something similarly invasive, attempting to peer into his very essence. Naruto's natural mental defenses, honed through years of containing the nine tails and strengthened through sage training, instinctively repelled the intrusion. The distant figure on the balcony straightened perceptibly, her posture registering surprise even from afar. "We should continue moving," Karis suggested urgently, noticing the exchange of attention. "It's unwise to attract Freya's interest." "Too late," Ansel muttered, quickening her pace. "She's already noticed him." The remainder of their journey proceeded without further incident, though Naruto maintained heightened awareness of their surroundings. The sensation of being observed never fully dissipated, suggesting either extensive surveillance networks or divine perception beyond mortal limitations. Upon returning to the Nemesis compound, they found preparations underway for an evening gathering. Servants arranged tables in the central courtyard while familia members donned more formal attire than their usual practical gear. "What's happening?" Naruto inquired as Karis led him toward his quarters. "Word of your status spread faster than anticipated," the advisor explained with resignation. "Several deities have requested CES with Goddess Nemesis, ostensibly to discuss familia matters, but genuinely to assess you. Our goddess has arranged a small reception to satisfy basic curiosity while maintaining control of the situation." Divine politics, Naruto surmised, not so different from dealings between village leaders back home. Indeed, Karis paused outside Naruto's door. "More formal attire has been provided. The gathering begins at sunset. Remember that while gods may appear casual or even frivolous, they perceive depths beyond mortal understanding. Choose your words carefully." Left alone to prepare, Naruto created several shadow clones to simultaneously scout the compound perimeter, practice calibrating his chakra to this world's different natural energy, and meditate in another attempt to connect with Kurama. The division of attention came naturally after years of using the technique for accelerated training. The formal clothing provided proved more comfortable than expected, layered robes in dignified navy blue with subtle orange accents that complemented his coloring while conforming to local fashion standards. The outfit included clever accommodations for concealed weapons, suggesting an emesis understood a warrior's need for security. As the gathering commenced, Naruto observed the interactions with a diplomat's eye, identifying power dynamics among the assembled deities. Unlike the bombastic personalities of the Five Cage, these gods concealed their rivalries beneath layers of etiquette and carefully crafted affability. The atmosphere reminded him of court functions in the Land of Iron, civility masking potential violence. "Our guest of honor arrives," Nemesis announced as Naruto entered the courtyard. She stood at the center of the gathering, her mismatched eyes gleaming with satisfaction at the reaction his appearance provoked among her divine colleagues. "May I present Naruto Uzumaki, Sage of the Immeasurable Status." The assembled gods turned to assess him with gazes that seemed to penetrate beyond physical appearance. Naruto recognized the moment as a critical first impression and channeled the diplomatic presence Kakashi had insisted he develop as a potential future Hokage. "I'm honored by your welcome," he stated, bowing with precise formality, deep enough to show respect without the subservience that would undermine his position. "Goddess Nemesis has Own exceptional hospitality during my unexpected arrival in your world. A slender god with features reminiscent of a fox stepped forward first, his movements possessed of an unnatural grace. Fasten. Aiding terminology. Your world rather than, your city, or, your land. Quite telling. His smile revealed slightly pointed canines. I am Takemikazuki, god of thunder and swordsmanship. Your energy signature is intriguing. As is yours, Naruto replied honestly. We have thunder deities in my homeland as well, though they rarely walk among mortals. This provoked murmurs of interest among the gathered immortals. A goddess with flowing green hair and eyes like deep forest pools approached next. I am Hephaestus, goddess of the forge. The weapon pouches you carry, may I inquire about their craftsmanship? The metallurgy appears unfamiliar. Naruto removed a standard kunai and offered it for inspection, handle first. Standard shinobi equipment from Konoha. Chakra conductive alloy forge. D to maintain balance when thrown or used in close combat. Hephaestus examined the weapon with professional appreciation. Exceptional balance. Simple yet perfectly functional design. The metal composition. She ran a finger along the blade, her touch causing the metal to briefly glow. Unknown to our world. How fascinating. The technical discussion attracted other deities, each introducing themselves and inquiring about specific aspects of Naruto's abilities, origins, or equipment. He answered honestly but selectively, following shinobi protocols for information security while building rapport. Throughout the exchanges, he noted Nemesis observing with approval. Her strategic orchestration of this controlled introduction prevented any single deity from monopolizing access to him. Why? La satisfying immediate curiosity, a diplomatic maneuver worthy of Tsunade at her most politically astute. The gathering's dynamics shifted subtly when new arrivals were announced. Conversations pause. D as all eyes turned toward the compound entrance where two figures appeared, one a diminutive goddess with bright eyes and a cheerful demeanor that belied the calculating intelligence behind her smile, the other a tall, imposingly beautiful woman whose silver-white hair immediately identified her as the figure Naruto had observed at Folkvanger. Loki and Freya, Ansel whispered from nearby, where she'd been quietly monitoring the proceedings. The leaders of Orario's two most powerful familias. Their simultaneous arrival is no coincidence. Nemesis moved to greet her divine peers with perfect composure, though Naruto detected the slightest tension in her posture. Goddesses Loki and Freya, you honor my humble gathering with your illustrious presence. When we heard about your interesting new friend, Loki replied with a grin that somehow managed to be both friendly and predatory, we simply couldn't resist making his acquaintance. Her eyes found Naruto across the courtyard, assessing him with unnerving thoroughness. Freya, however, maintained a more direct approach. She moved through the gathering with ethereal grace, other deities instinctively creating a path before her. When she reached Naruto, the full impact of her divine beauty became apparent, features so perfect they almost hurt to look upon directly, yet compelling in their flawlessness. So you're the anomaly everyone's discussing, she stated. Her voice musical yet somehow haunting. The one whose status defies classification. Naruto met her gaze steadily, aware of the complete silence that had fallen over the gathering. And you're the goddess who attempted to examine my soul without permission earlier today. Several gasps arose from onlookers at his directness, but Freya's expression transformed into delighted surprise. How refreshing. Most mortals can't even perceive my discernment, let alone resist it. She circled him slowly, silver eyes gleaming with interest. You've walked between worlds, haven't you? I can sense the dimensional displacement around you, like ripples in still water. I'm working on finding my way home, Naruto acknowledged. Perhaps you were brought here for a purpose, Freya suggested, her voice lowering intimately despite their public setting. The threads of fate rarely tangle without reason. If there's a purpose, Naruto replied firmly, I'll determine it for myself. I don't believe in predetermined destiny. Freya laughed, the sound like crystal bells. Oh, I do like you, Sage Uzumaki. Such delightful defiance wrapped in unexpected wisdom. She extended a slender hand. Would you walk with me? I have questions about your world that might prove mutually beneficial. The invitation created an immediate political dilemma. Refusing would risk offense to Orario's most powerful goddess, while accepting might undermine Nemesis's position as his host. Naruto chose a diplomatic middle path. I appreciate your interest, Goddess Freya, he responded, briefly taking her offered hand with formal courtesy before releasing it. Perhaps after tomorrow's guild assessment, we might arrange a proper conversation. Tonight, however, I owe my attention to Goddess Nemesis, who graciously provided sanctuary when I arrived with nothing. The answer satisfied both protocol and personal integrity. Freya's expression registered appreciation for the tactic. Al finesse rather than offense at the deferral. Well played, she acknowledged with a small smile. I shall look forward to witnessing your assessment tomorrow. The guild has granted observation privileges to several familias. Mine included. She glanced toward Nemesis. Your hospitality honors your domain of balanced judgment, Nemesis. This one's true worth clearly warrants careful consideration. The gathering continued with renewed energy, conversations flowing around Naruto while carefully avoiding direct questioning about his full capabilities before the official assessment. He used the opportunity to gather information about Orario's power structures, the relationships between prominent familias, and the general worldview of its inhabitants. Most enlightening were the casual references to the dungeon, not merely a monster-infested labyrinth but apparently a living entity in its own right, responding to patterns of exploration and exploitation with evolving defenses. The parallels to chakra networks and natural energy systems in his own world suggested potential connections worth investigating. As the evening progressed, Naruto noticed one guest observing from the periphery. A woman whose scholarly demeanor and focused attention differed from the social networking prevalent among others. When their paths eventually crossed near the refreshment tables, she introduced herself with straightforward directness. Amara Therios, independent researcher specializing in dimensional anomalies and cross-world phenomena, she stated without preamble. Your arrival has created ripples in patterns I've been tracking for years. Naruto studied her with renewed interest. You research dimensional travel, among other metaphysical phenomena. She adjusted spectacles that framed intelligent eyes. The barriers between worlds occasionally thin, allowing objects, rarely people, to pass through. Historical records document 17 confirmed cases over the past millennium, EAC. Coinciding with specific celestial alignments or magical confluences. And my arrival matches these patterns. Not entirely, Amara admitted, lowering her voice. Previous transferences occurred at established nexus points. Yours manifested in an ordinary location with no prior dimensional significance. Moreover, you arrived intact with all your abilities. Most travelers suffer significant degradation during transfer. The academic discussion provided Naruto his first genuinely useful information about his situation. I'd like to hear more about your research. It might help me understand how to return home. I have extensive notes at my workshop near the library district, Amara offered. After your guild assessment, perhaps. Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion at the compound entrance. A guild messenger arrived, breathing heavily from apparent haste, and requested immediate audience with Nemesis. After a brief private exchange, the goddess approached Naruto with uncharacteristic urgency. The guild has moved your assessment to tonight, she informed him quietly. Reports indicate unusual monster activity near the eastern wall, the same area where you first appeared. They believe there may be a connection and wish to evaluate your abilities while investigating the anomaly. Naruto nodded, instantly shifting from diplomatic guest to focused shinobi. I'm ready whenever they are. I'll accompany you, Amara interjected unexpectedly. If dimensional phenomena are involved, my expertise may prove valuable. Nemesis considered briefly before nodding agreement. Karis will represent our familia's interests. Ansel, prepare a small escort team. As arrangements proceeded, Naruto became aware of Freya observing the developments with peculiar intensity. When their eyes met across the courtyard, she offered a knowing smile that suggested the timing was perhaps less coincidental than it appeared. The gods, game begins sooner than expected, Karis commented as they prepared to depart. Be careful, Sage Uzumaki. In Orario, being a valuable piece on the board can be more dangerous than being an enemy. Naruto adjusted his weapons pouches beneath his formal robes. Where I come from, we make our own rules rather than playing someone else's game. He formed a familiar hand sign, creating 3 perfect shadow clones that immediately transformed into nondescript attendants. Let's go see what's happening at the eastern wall. As they departed the compound, The evening stars glittered above Orario like silent witnesses to the unfolding events. Somewhere among them, Naruto knew, lay the path back to Konoha, but the journey there would clearly lead through challenges unique to this world of gods, monsters, and power beyond conventional measurement. Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, Whispers of Power. The eastern wall loomed against the night sky, torches illuminating its weathered stonework in uneven patches of amber light. Guild officials had established a perimeter, their uniforms crisp despite the late hour as they directed adventurers and maintained order. Beyond the wall, darkness concealed whatever anomalies had triggered this unusual mobilization. But Naruto's heightened senses detected subtle disturbances in the natural energy patterns, ripples similar to those he'd felt upon his own arrival. Protocol dictates adventurer evaluation in controlled environments, muttered a guild official whose formal attire and perpetual frown marked him as someone uncomfortable with improvisation. This field assessment is highly irregular. So is our subject, Aina Tool replied, her half-elven features composed as she approached Naruto's party. Thank you for responding promptly to our summons, Mr. Uzumaki. Just Naruto is fine, he corrected with an easy smile that belied his tactical assessment of the surroundings. His shadow clones, disguised as attendants, had already dispersed to gather intelligence from different vantage points. What exactly are we dealing with? Aina gestured toward the wall. 3 separate patrol groups reported spatial distortions approximately 2 hours ago, momentary rifts through which they glimpsed something not of our world. She glanced meaningfully at Naruto. Given your unique arrival and the location coincidence, the guild believes the phenomena may be connected. A reasonable hypothesis, Amara interjected, adjusting her spectacles as she consulted a notebook filled with arcane calculations. Dimensional breaches often occur in clusters, especially when the initial transfer involved significant energy, like a stone creating ripples when dropped in water. Naruto nodded thoughtfully. In my world, space-time ninjutsu can create similar aftereffects. What's the current situation? Contained, for now. Aina led them toward a section of wall where guild personnel had established a command post. Maps spread across makeshift tables showed the surrounding terrain, marked with symbols indicating anomaly sightings. No monsters have emerged yet, but our sensors detect irregular energy readings consistent with dungeon phenomena occurring outside dungeon parameters. The practical response impressed Naruto. Despite their surprise at his abilities, these guild officials operated with professional efficiency, establishing security protocols while gathering data methodically. It reminded him of Konoha's emergency response systems following Pain's attack, adapting to unprecedented circumstances with structured flexibility. Karis studied the maps with narrowed eyes. These pattern distributions resemble arcane summoning geometries. If dimensional boundaries are thinning at these coordinates, then whatever's coming through would appear here, Naruto completed the thought, indicating a clearing approximately half a kilometer beyond the wall. That's where I arrived as well. A commotion near the gate drew their attention. Goddess Freya had arrived, with an escort of formidable warriors, men and women whose equipment and bearing spoke of elite training and considerable power. Most striking was a gray-haired human whose stoic expression and massive two-handed sword marked him as their combat leader. Otar, Ansel whispered, awe and wariness mingling in her tone. Freya Familia's captain, the only level 7 adventurer in Orario. Naruto studied the man with professional interest. Despite his imposing physical presence, Otar moved with controlled precision that spoke of mastery beyond brute strength. His gaze, when it briefly met Naruto's across the gathering, contained neither challenge nor dismissal, merely calm assessment between warriors. Curious timing, Karis murmured. The Freya Familia rarely responds to standard guild alerts. This is hardly standard, Aina replied diplomatically before addressing the assembled leaders. The guild appreciates all Familia assistance with this investigation. Our priority remains assessment and containment of any dimensional anomalies or resulting monster incursions. The briefing that followed established a clear operational framework. Guild officials would coordinate from the command post while adventurer teams investigated specific quadrants beyond the wall. Naruto's assessment would proceed concurrently, with guild evaluators observing his response to whatever they encountered. I request permission to accompany Uzumaki's team, Amara stated formally. My research into dimensional phenomena may provide contextual insights. Granted, Aina confirmed after brief consultation with senior officials. Freya Familia has also expressed interest in observing this assessment directly. Naruto caught Freya's subtle smile at this announcement. She had clearly maneuvered to maintain proximity during his evaluation. The political subtext wasn't lost on Karis, whose expression tightened momentarily before smoothing into diplomatic neutrality. The Nemesis Familia welcomes co-liberation with our esteemed colleagues, the advisor stated with formal precision. Goddess Nemesis values balance in all endeavors. As preparations concluded, Naruto discreetly created another Ado clone that transformed into a nondescript forest creature before slipping away unnoticed. The clone would serve as advance reconnaissance while he managed the increasingly complex interpersonal dynamics surrounding him. Their investigation team assembled at the Eastern Gate, an eclectic group consisting of Naruto, Karis and Ansel representing Nemesis Familia, Amara with her research equipment, 2 guild officials including Aina, and a contingent from Freya Familia led by a Valkyrie-like woman introduced as Helen. Ottar remains with Goddess Freya, Helen explained with precise formality. I will observe on their behalf. As they proceeded beyond the wall, Naruto expanded his senses, allowing natural energy to flow through him without fully entering sage mode. The disturbances felt stronger outside the city's protective barrier, ripples in reality's fabric that resonated with his own chakra in ways both familiar and alien. The anomalies appear to follow ley line patterns documented in ancient texts, Amara observed. Consulting instruments that measured magical energy fluctuations. But their intensity surpasses historical records by orders of magnitude. Naruto's Shadow CL-1 reported back through their mental link. No immediate threats detected, but unusual energy concentrations forming in the clearing ahead. He shared this information selectively. There's definitely something happening in the clearing where I arrived, he informed the group. No visible monsters yet, but the energy patterns feel unstable. Aina glanced at him curiously. You can sense magic without detection items. Not exactly magic as you understand it, Naruto clarified. In my world, we utilize chakra, a combination of physical and spiritual energies. I can sense natural energy fluctuations, especially those similar to what brought me here. Their conversation halted as they reached the clearing's edge. In the center, precisely where Naruto had awakened in this world, faint luminescence pulsed in irregular patterns, casting eerie shadows across the disturbed ground. More concerning were the crystalline formations emerging from the soil, structures reminiscent of the monster core he'd observed during his brief dungeon orientation. This is unprecedented, one guild official whispered, recording observations in a logbook with trembling hands. Dungeon phenomena manifesting above ground without monster presence. Amara approached the formations cautiously, instruments extended. The energy signature matches deep-level dungeon readings, but with quantum fluctuations consistent with dimensional boundary stress. Quote, Naruto moved forward with shinobi stealth, his footfalls silent as he circled the phenomenon. The crystalline structures seemed to respond to his proximity, LSING brighter when he neared certain angles, dimming when he retreated. Through his chakra senses, he detected something like chakra pathways forming between the crystals, creating a geometric pattern reminiscent of complex fuinjutsu seals. It's establishing a network, he reported, rejoining the group. Similar to chakra pathway systems or, he sought appropriate terminology for this world. Like magic circuits connecting multiple points. A naturally occurring magic circle, Helen suggested, her professional detachment momentarily yielding to scholarly interest. Goddess Freya has spoken of such phenomena in ancient times. Quote, before discussion could continue, the crystalline formation pulsed violently. Light erupted in geometric patterns across the clearing, and reality itself seemed to warp within the illuminated boundaries. Through the distortion, Naruto glimpsed fragmentary images, landscapes not of this world, figures in motion, and most strikingly, what appeared to be Konoha's Hokage monument in the distance. That's my village, he breathed, instinctively stepping toward the wavering image. Don't approach, Amara warned sharply. Dimensional apertures are highly unstable. Her warning proved prescient as the distortion collapsed inward before violently expanding. The shockwave rippled outward with concussive force, throwing several team members backward. Only Naruto, Helen, and Ansel maintained their footing, their combat reflexes triggering instantaneous bracing postures. More disturbing was what emerged from the collapsing portal, 3 creatures unlike a NY Naruto had encountered in either world. They resembled wolves in basic structure but with crystalline growths protruding from their bodies, eyes glowing with the same energy that had formed the dimensional rift. Their movements blended organic fluidity with mechanical precision as they oriented toward the investigation team. Unknown monster variant, Aina stated, her professional training reasserting itself despite obvious concern. Possibly corrupted by dimensional energy. They're not just corrupted, Naruto corrected, instantly analyzing the threat. These aren't native to either were. LD, there's something formed in the space between dimensions. The creatures attacked with coordinated precision that contradicted bestial appearance. One lunged toward the fallen guild official's will. The others circled to flank the more capable combatants. Their strategy demonstrated intelligence beyond instinctual hunting behavior. Naruto moved before conscious thought completed, his body carrying with speed that left afterimages as he intercepted the creature targeting the vulnerable guild members. A precisely delivered kick redirected its lunge, sending it tumbling across the clearing. While he positioned himself protectively, Ansel, defensive perimeter around non-combatants, he called out, seamlessly assuming tactical command. Helen, can you handle the one on the left? The Freya Familia warrior answered by drawing twin short swords with fluid grace. Consider it done. Her blades gleamed with enchantment as she engaged her target with disciplined aggression. The third Eacher, seemingly the alpha based on its larger crystalline formations, focused on Naruto with unsettling intelligence. It circled cautiously, assessing rather than blindly attacking. When it finally struck, the speed and precision surprised even Naruto's battle-honed reflexes. He narrowly avoided crystalline claws that sliced through the air where his throat had been moments before. These aren't mindless monsters, he called out as he countered with a sweeping leg strike that the creature partially evaded. They're adapting to our movements, learning our patterns. The observation proved ACC. Urate as the alpha fainted left before executing a complex maneuver that nearly breached Naruto's guard. Only years of sparring with Kiba's beast mimicking combat style gave him the intuitive understanding needed to counter the increasingly sophisticated attack sequences. Deciding to end the threat efficiently, Naruto created 3 shadow clones without hand signs, a refinement of his signature technique developed during post-war years. The clones emerged directly in combat-ready positions, instantly implementing a containment formation around the alpha creature. Gasps of surprise arose from the observers as identical Narutos coordinated their assault with perfect synchronization. Even Helen paused momentarily in her own battle, her composed expression giving way to genuine astonishment. Multiple manifestation without chanting or magic circle, Amara murmured, recording observations despite the danger. Perfect replication rather than illusion. The alpha creature hesitated, its predatory instincts confused by the suddenly multiplied opponent. This momentary uncertainty gave Naruto the opening he needed. His palm began glowing with condensed chakra, spiraling into a perfect sphere of destructive potential. Rasengan, he stated calmly, driving the technique into the creature's crystalline core as his clones restrained its thrashing limbs. The impact released contained force with surgical precision, enough to shatter the core structure without excessive collateral damage. The creature disintegrated into particles that resembled neither monster remains from the dungeon nor natural decomposition, instead seeming to unravel at a fundamental level before dissolving into ambient energy. Across the clearing, Helen dispatched her opponent with efficient bladework, while Ansel and Karis coordinated to eliminate the third creature using a combination of spear techniques and supportive magic. The battle concluded with remarkable speed once Naruto's demonstration catalyzed coordinated action. Assessment Phase 1 complete, Aina announced with admirable composure as she recorded observations. Subject demonstrates exceptional combat capabilities including tactical leadership, physical enhancements, replication abilities, and unknown energy projection techniques. Naruto released his shadow clones and approached the dissolution site of the alpha creature. Kneeling, he examined residual energy patterns with both physical and chakra senses. These weren't fully materialized in this world, he observed. More like projections partially converted into physical form. Fascinating implication, Amara replied, joining his examination. The dimensional boundary may be permitting energy patterns to manifest physically without complete transfer, like shadows preceding actual objects. Their investigation was interrupted as reinforcements arrived from Orario, additional guild personnel accompanied by members of several prominent familias. Most surprising was the presence of Ryuu Lion, ostensibly representing the hostess of fertility rather than any formal familia organization. The elven warrior acknowledged Naruto with a slight nod before addressing Aina. Mia Grand sent me when reports reached the hostess. She offers assistance with information gathering from various adventurer clients if needed. Thank you, Aina replied diplomatically. Your experience with unusual monster variants is appreciated. Ryu's attention shifted to the crystalline formations, her expression revealing professional assessment rather than the wariness she displayed during their guild encounter. These resemble deep-floor dungeon structures, but the energy signature feels wrong, discordant with normal dungeon emanations. Because they're not from the dungeon, Naruto explained, noting her tactical intelligence. They're byproducts of dimensional distortion, the space between worlds manifesting physically. Their eyes met briefly, mutual recognition of calm, pedants transcending their limited acquaintance. Something shifted in Ryu's assessment of him, the subtle tension in her posture yielding to professional acknowledgement. The formation is decaying rapidly, Amara announced. Instruments tracking energy dissipation. Without a stable anchor, the manifestation can't maintain coherence in this reality. As the investigation progressed, Naruto became aware of political currents flowing beneath the operational surface. Representatives from various familias positioned themselves strategically to observe him while maintaining plausible operational purposes. Guild officials documented everything meticulously, their reports undoubtedly destined for multiple interested parties throughout Orario's power structure. Most telling was Helen's careful documentation for Freya Familia, not merely combat capabilities but subtle details of Naruto's interaction styles, decision-making patterns, and relationship dynamics within the investigation team. Her observations went beyond security assessment into character profiling. When they finally returned to Orario near dawn, exhausted but satisfied with the contained threat, the Eastern Gate had transformed into an impromptu political forum. Various deities awaited with poorly disguised interest, their familia members creating security perimeters that strategically positioned their gods for optimal observation. Freya stood slightly apart from the others, her divine beauty enhanced rather than diminished by the early morning light. When Naruto passed, she spoke directly to him while ignoring the surrounding commotion. You performed magnificently, she offered, her voice carrying intimacy despite the public setting. Those creatures were mere shadows compared to your capability, yet you trained your power to protect others rather than showcase your full potential. Silver eyes studied him with unsettling perception. Humility and compassion alongside such strength, truly fascinating. I did what was necessary. Naruto replied simply, no more, no less. And that, Freya responded with a knowing smile, is precisely what makes you exceptional. She gestured subtly toward Babel Tower. The formal assessment awaits you after rest. I look forward to witnessing what you reveal when properly challenged. The exchange, though brief, caught the attention of multiple observers, including Ryuu, whose expression remained impassive but whose attention had noticeably sharpened. The political implications of Freya's personal interest were lost on no one familiar with Orario's power dynamics. Karis intercepted Naruto as they entered the city proper, guiding him through less conspicuous streets toward the Nemesis compound. You've made quite an impression, the advisor observed neutrally. Multiple familias will now pursue information about your capabilities and potential allegiance. I'm not interested in becoming anyone's collection piece, Naruto stated firmly. Noble sentiment, Karis replied with tired pragmatism, but Orario's politics rarely accommodate neutrality. Power attracts attention, whether desired or not. Upon reaching the compound, Nemesis herself awaited in the courtyard, her mismatched eyes revealing she had already received reports of the night's events. Rest, she instructed simply. The guild has scheduled your formal assessment for midday. Conserve your strength for what comes. Naruto nodded gratefully, retiring to his quarters where he immediately established a meditation posture. Rather than sleeping, he used the time to harmonize his chakra with this world's natural energy, adapting to subtle differences that affected technique execution. The exercise doubled as restorative rest while maintaining situational awareness, AP. Practice developed during the war when full sleep proved impossible for days at a stretch. The formal assessment at Babel Tower attracted unprecedented attention from Orario's power players. The guild had arranged a specialized arena normally reserved for high-level adventurer evaluations, a cavernous space beneath the tower's public floors, reinforced with magical barriers and observation areas protected from combat spillover. This facility allows full-capacity demonstration without risk to spectators or city infrastructure, Aina explained as she guided Naruto through preparation areas. Guild wishes to understand your capabilities comprehensively while respecting your personal techniques. Naruto appreciated the professional consideration. I'll demonstrate enough to satisfy basic classification without revealing everything. Some techniques would be excessive in confined spaces. Aina's expression suggested she understood the diplomatic understatement. The assessment has 3 phases: solo monster combat, cooperative tactical scenarios, and skills evaluation. Various guild specialists will document your performance in each category. And the audience? Naruto inquired, sensing the growing crowd beyond the preparation area. This seems more elaborate than standard adventurer registration. Your case is unprecedented, Aina acknowledged with characteristic directness. The guild permitted limited observation by familiar representatives for transparency. We prefer informed speculation over destructive rumors. The pragmatic approach aligned with Naruto's own diplomatic instincts. Better to control information flow than allow imagination and fear to generate worse scenarios than reality. When Naruto entered the arena, the assembled observers fell momentarily silent. Representatives from every major familia occupied designated sections, with deities themselves positioned in privileged viewing areas. He recognized Freya and Loki immediately, their divine auras unmistakable even among other immortals. Nemesis occupied a more modest position alongside fellow justice-oriented deities, her expression revealing nothing of her thoughts. Most interesting was the unexpected presence of Ryuu Lion among observers affiliated with no particular familia, a neutral position that nonetheless commanded respectful accommodation from guild officials. The elven warrior's attention fixed on him with analytical intensity, as if solving a complex tactical puzzle. The first assessment phase began without ceremonial preamble. Massive doors opened in the arena wall, releasing a controlled selection of monsters that charged toward Naruto with predatory focus. The creatures represented standard dungeon varieties from multiple floor levels, testing basic combat capabilities against known threat parameters. Naruto assessed the approaching monsters with tactical efficiency, noting movement patterns, apparent vulnerabilities, and group dynamics. Rather than immediately unleashing advanced techniques, he began with fundamental shinobi combat approaches, taijutsu sequences combined with basic chakra enhancement to test this world's creatures against his standard tactics. The results proved educational for both Naruto and the observers. Dungeon monsters possessed physical properties different from creatures in his world, their life force connected to core crystals rather than distributed throughout organic systems. This required adjustment to targeting priorities and striking force. As the combat intensified, Naruto gradually incorporated more sophisticated techniques. Shadow clones deployed in tactical formations demonstrated collaborative combat potential without external coordination. Chakra-enhanced weapons showed effectiveness against monster hide resistant to conventional weaponry. Throughout, he maintained awareness of observer reactions, gauging which capabilities generated particular interest from specific factions. Most revealing were expressions of guild evaluators recording his performance, professional assessment gradually yielding to undisguised amazement as he systematically dispatched increasingly dangerous monsters without apparent effort. Their documentation became more frantic with each new ability demonstrated, classification systems clearly struggling to categorize his multifaceted capabilities. When the final chair of the phase, a minotaur significantly larger than standard specimens, charged toward him with earth-shaking force, Naruto decided to demonstrate more advanced combat techniques. His hands formed ALS in sequences too rapid for observers to follow, culminating in a precisely controlled wind release technique. Futon Shinkaha, he stated calmly, exhaling a compressed blade of wind that sliced cleanly through the Minotaur's weapon, armor, and ultimately its core crystal. The creature disintegrated instantly, its remains scattering across the arena floor before dissolving into ambient energy. Silence followed the demonstration, not the momentary hush of earlier, but profound stillness born of collective reassessment. Even the most composed deities leaned forward with renewed interest, ire casual observation transformed into focused attention. Phase 1 complete, announced a guild official, voice impressively steady despite obvious amazement. Proceed to tactical assessment. Second phase introduced human elements, guild-affiliated adventurers serving as both allies and controlled opposition in simulated scenarios. Naruto found himself partnered with a rotating team of unfamiliar fighters, each specialized in different combat styles, against progressively complex challenges requiring coordinated response. This phase revealed more than simple combat capability, it demonstrated adaptability, leadership potential, and interpersonal dynamics under pressure. Naruto adjusted his approach for each team configuration, modifying techniques to complement allied capabilities, while identifying and enhancing team synergies with minimal verbal communication. Most impressive to observers was his ability to integrate seamlessly with unfamiliar combat systems. Weather support, magic-focused casters with tactical positioning, enhancing frontline fighters with clone-based flanking maneuvers, or adapting to unexpected scenario developments. Naruto demonstrated battlefield awareness that transcended specific technique execution. He's not just powerful, Naruto overheard one Loki Familia observer comment to another. He's a force multiplier for any team composition. The third assessment phase focused on specialized skills beyond direct combat, stealth capabilities, environmental navigation, information gathering, and improvised problem solving. This segment particularly interested Naruto, as it most closely resembled standard shinobi mission parameters from his world. During a particularly challenging stealth exercise involving magical detection barriers, Naruto sensed an unexpected presence observing from concealment beyond the formal audience areas. Expanding his awareness while maintaining focus on the assessment task, he identified the observer as a small goddess whose childlike appearance belied the ancient intelligence behind her eyes. Unlike other deities, she made no attempt to showcase her presence or affiliate with prominent familias, observing with scholarly detachment from the shadows. The final component of the assessment involved direct skills evaluation by guild specialists. Naruto demonstrated basic techniques from each shinobi discipline, ninjutsu, taijutsu, genjutsu, and fuinjutsu, translated into terminology more accessible to this world's classification systems. He withheld his most powerful abilities, including Sage Mode and Kurama's chakra, presenting himself as highly capable without revealing his full potential. As the assessment concluded, guild officials convened for immediate classification deliberation. High Familia representatives engaged in barely concealed networking among themselves. Naruto found himself approached by Aina, whose professional composure had gradually yielded to genuine respect throughout the evaluation. "The guild thanks you for your cooperation," she stated formally, though her expression conveyed more personal appreciation. "Your performance has been educational for our evaluation standards." Happy to provide perspective, Naruto replied with a smile that momentarily disrupted her professional detachment. "Though I suspect your classification system might need some adjustments." "Indeed," Aina acknowledged. "The guild council is currently debating appropriate designation for your capabilities. In the meantime, several familia representatives have requested informal conversations." Naruto noted the diplomatic phrasing. "You mean they're lining up to recruit me?" "Essentially," Aina confirmed with a hint of dry humor rarely displayed during official functions. "Guild protocol recommends considering all opportunities before committing to any single familia." Before Naruto could respond, their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a striking man whose entrance immediately commanded attention throughout the arena. She moved with warrior's precision despite her elaborate attire, amber eyes assessing everything with predatory awareness while tribal markings adorned copper skin in patterns Naruto didn't recognize from any of Orario's established races. Vyasa of the Windborn tribe, Aina introduced with careful neutrality. Independent, adventurer affiliated with multiple expeditionary groups. "So you're the one disrupting Orario's power balance," Vyasa stated without preamble, her accent distinctive yet perfectly understandable. Your fighting style incorporates elements similar to my people's wine techniques, yet fundamentally different in execution. Naruto studied her with professional interest. Her stance revealed comba chi training focused on mobility and precision rather than brute strength, while subtle calluses on her hands suggested weapon specializations beyond the curved blades visibly sheathed at her sides. Different worlds develop similar approaches to natural elements, he observed. Wind techniques are common among shinobi where I come from, though each village has distinctive applications. Show me, Vyasa challenged directly, her tone making the request neither hostile nor entirely friendly, a professional fighter's curiosity about compatible techniques. A demonstration exchange. No formal duel, just professional courtesy. The request violated no guild protocols regarding completed assessments, yet carried potential political implications given the assembled observers. Naruto weighed these considerations against the practical benefit of engaging with a fighter whose style might provide insights about this world's combat approaches. I'd welcome the exchange, he decided, sensing no malicious intent behind the request. Training parameters only, technique demonstration rather than victory conditions. Aina glanced between them before nodding reluctant approval. The assessment arena remains secured for calibration purposes. A brief demonstration exchange would be permissible under guild observation. Word spread rapidly through the assembled representatives, creating renewed attention as Naruto and Vyasa took positions at opposite sides of the central arena space. The improvised demonstration attracted even those preparing to depart, including several deities who repositioned for optimal viewing angles. 3 exchange sequences, Vyasa proposed, drawing her curved blades with fluid grace. No lethal intent, full mobility permitted, technical execution emphasized over victory conditions. Agreed, Naruto confirmed, settling into a standard Konoha-ready stance while assessing her weapon style. The curved blades appeared designed for wind enhancement, similar in concept to Asuma's chakra blades, though with distinctive cultural modifications. Their first exchange began with Vyasa's explosive acceleration, her speed impressive even by shinobi standards. She closed distance with a spiraling approach that maximized momentum while minimizing predictability. Her blades traced complex patterns that manipulated air currents around them, creating localized pressure differentials that enhanced cutting potential. Naruto responded with Academy standard taijutsu sequences modified for her unique attack vectors. He purposely limited chakra enhancement to levels comparable with high-tier adventurers, making the exchange educational for observers analyzing capability benchmarks. The initial sequence concluded with mutual disengagement. Both fighters Ving demonstrated foundational techniques without attempting to overcome the other's defenses. Appreciative murmurs rose from knowledgeable observers who recognized the professional courtesy underlying the controlled exchange. Your fundamentals are universally applicable, Vyasa acknowledged, adjusting her grip slightly for the second exchange. Now something more representative of our respective styles. Their second engagement incorporated intermediate techniques, Vyasa channeling what this world called magic through her weapons to generate visible wind manifestations around her blades, while Naruto incorporated chakra molding without hand signs to enhance his counters with subtle elemental properties. The revealed fascinating technical contrasts between their systems. Sa's magic required brief invocation phrases that created momentary openings in her attack sequences, yet produced effects of greater initial intensity than comparable chakra techniques. Naruto's system offered greater flexibility and transition speed between effects, yet required more precise control to maintain efficiency. Most educational was the fundamental difference in energy sourcing, her AGIC drawing primarily from external connection to environmental mana through her Falna blessing, while his chakra circulated internally with natural energy supplementation through conscious harmonization. Their final exchange incorporated advanced applications that drew audible reactions from the audience. Vyasa's tribal heritage manifested in techniques clearly predating formal familia systems. Ancient magic channeling primal wind elements through movements resembling ritual dance as much as martial application. Naruto responded with pure chakra control techniques developed during post-war refinement training, precise application minimizing wastage while maximizing effect. When they concluded the demonstration with formal disengagement, spontaneous appreciation spread through the gathered observers. The exchange had showcased technical mastery without competitive dominance, a rare display in Orario's achievement-focused culture. "Your wind affinity is impressively developed," Vyasa commented as they returned to neutral positions. "Yet I sense it's not your primary element." Naruto smiled at her perceptiveness. "Originally water and wind, though I've developed working proficiency with all 5 basic elements. Your tribal techniques incorporate spiritual components beyond pure elemental manipulation, impressive integration. The old ways remember connections modern systems forget," she replied with unexpected philosophical depth. "Your demonstration honors our traditional knowledge exchange customs. The Windborn acknowledge you as Wind Brother regardless of origin realm." The formal acknowledgement carried significance beyond its literal meaning. Naruto recognized the establishment of professional respect that transcended Orario's familia-based allegiance systems. Before he could formulate an appropriately respectful response, guild officials returned with their assessment results. "After extensive deliberation," announced the senior evaluator with formal gravity, "the guild hereby classifies Naruto Uzumaki as an SSS-Rank independent specialist with unrestricted operational authorization throughout guild-administered territories." Murmurs immediately spread through the assembled representatives. The classification was unprecedented. Even legendary adventurers typically received specific category designations rather than the comprehensive authorization implied by this unique status. Furthermore, the evaluator continued, "The guild formally acknowledges Mr. Uzumaki's techniques as proprietary knowledge exempt from standard documentation requirements under privacy protocols typically reserved for familia-specific development. This additional provision, likely negotiated by Nemesis through diplomatic channels, provided crucial protection for Shinobi techniques that might otherwise become targets for magical research or replication attempts." Naruto nodded appreciation toward the goddess, whose subtle smile acknowledged the successful maneuver. As formal proceedings concluded, the political dimension shifted from institutional assessment to interpersonal recruitment. Representatives from major familias approached with various degrees of subtlety, each attempting to establish preliminary connections that might lead to eventual affiliation. Most direct was a distinguished human male whose formal attire and regal bearing marked him as nobility before he even introduced himself. "Fin Diemni, captain of the Loki familia," he stated, offering a hand in greeting. "Your performance was most enlightening. Our familia specializes in deep floor dungeon exploration where your unique capabilities would find appropriate challenges." "I appreciate the acknowledgement," Naruto replied diplomatically, recognizing the recruitment approach beneath professional courtesy. "Though my current priority remains understanding this world's fundamental systems before making long-term commitments." Finn nodded with apparent understanding. "A wise approach. Should you seek practical dungeon experience with established teams, our door remains open regardless of formal affiliation. Capability transcends organizational boundaries in matters of genuine significance." The offer represented significant political flexibility from Orario's most structured exploration familia, a testament to Loki's interest in his potential contribution to their expeditions. Naruto filed this connection for future consideration, particularly if dungeon exploration might provide insights about dimensional boundaries. As various representatives made similar approaches with differing incentives, Naruto maintained diplomatic engagement while avoiding commitments. The process reminded him of inter-village negotiations following the war, when his unique status attracted similar recruitment efforts from multiple nations. Most surprising was the absence of direct Freya familia recruitment despite their goddess's obvious interest. Instead, Freya herself observed from distance, silver eyes tracking his interactions with analytical patience, suggesting longer-term strategy rather than immediate acquisition. "A fascinating cultural study," commented Amara, who had observed the entire assessment from the researcher section. She approached as the crowd gradually thinned, her academic demeanor unchanged despite the impressive demonstrations. "Your abilities catalyzed unprecedented cooperation between typically competitive familias during the anomaly investigation, yet now stimulate intensified recruitment rivalry. The sociological implications alone warrant dedicated analysis. I'm disrupting established power dynamics simply by existing outside their classification systems," Naruto observed, appreciating her analytical perspective. "Similar patterns emerged in my world when individuals developed capabilities that transcended village boundaries. Precisely why historical documentation of your experiences would provide invaluable comparative data, Amara agreed enthusiastically. My research facility maintains records of dimensional anomalies dating back centuries. Perhaps you might visit when convenient. The historical context could provide insights regarding your arrival mechanism. The invitation offered practical benefits beyond academic interest. Understanding his transportation might reveal pathways home. I'd appreciate that opportunity, Naruto confirmed. Though security considerations suggest discretion regarding research location and timing. Amara nodded understanding. Of course, the politics surrounding dimensional knowledge can be complicated. She provided a small communication crystal. This allows secure message transmission when you're ready to arrange a visit. As the formal assessment gathering dispersed, Naruto found himself approached by the one observer who had maintained consistent professional distance throughout proceedings, Ryuu Lion. The elven warrior moved with characteristic economy, her express Reshin revealing nothing of her intentions as she positioned herself directly in his path without being overtly confrontational. Your capabilities exceed conventional parameters, she stated without preamble. Yet you deliberately restrained demonstration of your full potential throughout assessment. The direct observation surprised Naruto. Most observers had been too impressed by what he showed to consider what remained hidden. You have exceptionally sharp eyes. Experience, Ryuu corrected flatly. I recognize restraint patterns in established fighters. You operate at approximately XTY% capacity during most exchanges, maintaining substantial reserves while satisfying observation requirements. Her tactical assessment impressed him. Few in his own world could quantify his capability ratios so accurately based on limited observation. A reasonable precaution in unfamiliar territory. Indeed, something shifted in her expression. Not warmth exactly, but professional acknowledgement between warriors who understood necessary caution. The hostess of fertility maintains private dining areas where conversations occur beyond typical surveillance networks. If you seek info, information about Orario's underlying systems rather than official narratives, Mia Gran permits factual exchanges without political filtering. The offer represented significant trust from someone clearly accustomed to maintaining careful distance from others. I appreciate genuine information sources, Naruto acknowledged. Especially regarding historical events not included in official records. Ryuu nodded once, message received. Northwest District, copper lanterns outside. Evening meal service begins at sunset. Without further elaboration, she departed with the same efficient movement that characterized her combat style. Karis approached as the arena finally emptied of observers. You've navigated the political currents admirably for someone new to our world, the advisor observed. Though the true negotiations have only begun. Your unprecedented classification guarantees continued interest from multiple factions. Including some who haven't shown their hands yet, Naruto agreed. Having sensed subtle observation from shadows beyond official participation throughout the proceedings. Indeed, Karis gestured toward the exit where Ansel awaited with appropriate Nemesis Familia escort. The goddess requests your presence when convenient. Today's events warrant strategic discussion regarding your continued accommodation within our compound. The diplomatic phrasing clarified that while Nemesis had successfully secured his independent classification, his residency arrangements now required formalization beyond initial emergency hospitality. The political implications of housing an unaffiliated SSS-Rank specialist affected the Familia's position relative to more powerful organizations. Of course, Naruto agreed, understanding the delicate balance Nemesis maintained. I appreciate her continued support during this transition period. As they departed Babel Tower, Naruto maintained heightened awareness of multiple observation points throughout the route. His status had transformed from mysterious visitor to confirmed power piece on Orario's complex game board. The coming days would require careful navigation of political currents while pursuing his primary objective of finding a path home. Most concerning was the lingering sensation of being observed by entities beyond conventional detection, presences that registered at the edge of his chakra senses without manifesting physically. Whether divine attention or something else entirely, the intensity of focus suggested his arrival had disrupted factors beyond visible political structures. The Nemesis compound appeared outwardly unchanged upon their return, Yet subtle security enhancements revealed the familia's adaptation to their residents' elevated profile. Additional sentries maintained positions at strategic points, while magical barriers had been reinforced around perimeter sections. Goddess Nemesis awaited in her private study, a modest chamber whose primary furnishing was a massive tab covered with ancient texts and mapping tools. Her mismatched eyes studied him with the balanced assessment that characterized her domain of justice and equilibrium. "You performed as expected, Shish," E stated without preamble once attendants withdrew. "The guild classification provides necessary operational freedom while your techniques remain protected from institutional documentation. Thank you for negotiating those provisions," Naruto acknowledged, recognizing the diplomatic effort required to secure such unusual arrangements. "The independent status serves everyone's interests while I determine my path forward." Indeed, Nemesis traced patterns on a map spread before her, ancient ley lines connecting points throughout Orario and beyond. "However, your demonstrated capabilities have accelerated certain factional movements normally contained by traditional power balances. The dimensional anomalies further complicate matters." Naruto studied the map with interest. "You believe my arrival corresponds with these energy pathways?" "More than corresponds, integrates," Nemesis corrected, indicating intersection points where multiple lines converged. Ancient texts describe similar manifestations during periods of realm thinning, when barriers between worlds temporarily weakened. Such events typically herald significant changes to established order. The implications aligned with Naruto's experiences during the Fourth War, when dimensional boundaries similarly weakened during periods of concentrated chakra manipulation. "In my world, such boundaries typically require IFIC sealing techniques or bloodline abilities to traverse intentionally. In ours, the gods descended from upper realms millennia ago, establishing controlled pathways between dimensional planes." Nemesis traced a specific pattern that encircled Babel Tower. The dungeon itself represents a controlled dimensional breach, a channel between realms maintained through divine covenant that prevents unregulated manifestation. This perspective transformed Naruto's understanding of the dungeon system, not merely a monster habitat but a controlled dimensional interface similar to specialized summoning grounds in his world. And the anomalies suggest this control is weakening. Precisely. Nemesis's expression revealed unusual concern for a deity typically characterized by impartial judgment. Quote, "Your arrival may be symptom rather than cause, a manifestation of broader destabilization affecting multiple realms simultaneously." The conversation shifted toward practical considerations regarding Naruto's continued residence within Orario. While maintaining guest status within the Nemesis compound offered political protection, it limited his operational flexibility and potentially constrained the familia's position relative to more powerful organizations. Guild regulations permit establishment of independent contractor residence within central districts, Nemesis explained, outlining options with practical directness. Such arrangements would provide operational autonomy while maintaining our established alliance without formal familia integration. The solution elegantly addressed political considerations while expanding Naruto's freedom of movement throughout Orario, a significant advantage for information gathering and anomaly investigation. They discussed practical implementation details with mutual respect for diplomatic necessities and operational realities. As their meeting concluded, Nemesis offered a final observation that transcended political calculation. "Your PR essence creates possibility spaces where certainty previously prevailed," she stated, her divine perspective momentarily visible beneath her composed exterior. "In my domain of balanced judgment, such catalysts for change are neither inherently positive nor negative, merely necessary for evolution of established systems." "I've played that role before," Naruto acknowledged, thinking of how his tense had repeatedly disrupted established patterns in his own world. "Though I prefer changes that protect people rather than endanger them." "A worthy preference," Nemesis agreed with unexpected warmth. "And perhaps why fate delivered you here rather than elsewhere. Balance sometimes requires external elements to restore equilibrium when systems drift toward extremes." Following the meeting, Naruto prepared for his evening appointment at the Hostess of Fertility. The establishment's reputation as neutral ground for information exchange offered potential insights beyond official narratives. Particularly from someone like Ryuu Lion, whose observational acuity and apparent historical knowledge might provide valuable context for understanding this world's dimensional mechanics. As he navigated Orario's northwestern district, following Ryuu's directions, Naruto maintained awareness of shifting observation patterns surrounding him. Multiple factions maintained discreet surveillance, some from rooftop vantage points, others through network informants positioned along likely travel routes. Most concerning were the occasional flickers of divine attention, brief moments of intensified focus from entities not physically present but observing through unknown means. The hostess of fertility presented a deceptively ordinary exterior, a substantial tavern whose weathered wooden sign and cop. Her lantern suggested comfortable reliability rather than exceptional significance. Only subtle details revealed its true importance, the quality of clientele entering and departing, the strategic pause issuing relative to major district intersections, and the carefully maintained sight lines allowing occupants to observe approaching visitors from multiple angles. Inside, the establishment combined boisterous public spaces with secluded alcoves designed for private conversation. Naruto immediately identified security measures integrated throughout the architecture, strategic barriers preventing sound transmission between sections, carefully positioned mirrors allowing staff to monitor activities discreetly, and reinforced structural elements suggesting preparation for potential combat situations despite the non-violence policy. Most impressive was the proprietress herself, a massive dwarven woman whose physically imposing presence was matched by the authoritative aura she projected throughout the establishment. Without being explicitly informed, Naruto instantly recognized Mia Grand as the true power center within the hostess, her awareness of everything occurring within her domain ident in her positioning and attentive gaze despite apparent focus on mundane tavern operations. Ryu Lion appeared from a side passage before Naruto could announce himself. Her work attire, a server's uniform tailored for practical movement, did nothing to diminish the composed dignity she maintained regardless of circumstance. "You came," she observed with minimal inflection, though something approximating approval flickered briefly in her expression. "This way. Mia has authorized use of the eastern alcove for your visit." The private dining area she indicated offered both security and comfort, positioned to prevent external observation while providing occupants with clear views of both main entrance and kitchen access points. The tactical considerations underlying such arrangements impressed Naruto, suggesting the establishment's neutrality was maintained through strength rather than passivity. Once seated, Ryu dispensed with server pretense, taking the opposite chair with fluid economy of movement. "You're being watched by 7 distinct factions," she stated without preamble. 3 maintain physical surveillance teams, 2 utilize information networks, and at least 2 employ magical observation methods beyond conventional detection. The direct confirmation of his own assessment established immediate professional respect. 11 observation points by my count, Naruto corrected mildly. Though several operate under unified command structures. A flicker of surprise crossed Ryu's typically composed features. "You detected the Ganesha Familia observers on the northwestern approach. Impressive." Her posture shifted subtly, reassessing his capabilities upward. "What do you seek in Orario beyond guild classification and familiar recruitment?" "Understanding of dimensional mechanics that might explain my arrival and potentially offer return pathways," Naruto answered honestly, recognizing the value of direct exchange with someone whose observational acuity matched his own. And information about historical precedents not included in official records. Ryu studied him silently for several moments, weighing considerations beyond those explicitly stated. Quote, "The dimensional anomalies accompanying your arrival resemble descriptions from the ancient times, particularly the spiriting away incidents documented in Elven historical texts." This reference to specific historical phenomena represented significant trust, sharing specialized knowledge typically protected within racial communities. Naruto acknowledged this with appropriate seriousness. "In my world, dimensional transit typically requires specific bloodline abilities or advanced sealing techniques," he explained, offering equivalent specialized information. "Natural crossings occur only during periods of severe boundary destabilization, usually accompanied by catastrophic energy releases." Their conversation developed into genuine information exchange rather than tactical positioning, each recognizing the other's professional competence and practical approach to complex situations. Ryuu provided historical context regarding previous dimensional anomalies documented throughout Orario's history, while Naruto shared relevant parallels from shinobi knowledge regarding boundary mechanics. Most valuable was Ryu's explanation of dungeon mechanics beyond guild documentation, the living nature of the structure, its apparent intelligence regarding adventurer patterns, and the correlation between monster evolution and boundary stability throughout historical records. The dungeon adapts defensively when dimensional integrity weakens, she explained, drawing subtle diagrams with condensation from her drinking vessel. Historical records describe monster mutations and unusual spatial phenomena during periods preceding major realm contact events. Similar to chakra system responses to foreign energy introduction, Naruto observed, recognizing parallels with Jinchuriki adaptation patterns. A living system maintaining equilibrium through defensive evolution. Their exchange continued through the meal service, information flowing efficiently between professionals who recognized the value of accurate intelligence beyond political filtering. Ryu's knowledge combined guild-accessible data with perspectives from elven historical traditions and personal observations from high-level dungeon exploration, creating a comprehensive picture exceeding official narratives. As their conversation progressed to current political implications, Ryu demonstrated surprising insight regarding familia power dynamics. Freya's interest represents most immediate concern, she stated with clinical detachment. Her collection impulse typically focuses on beautiful souls rather than practical capability. Yet your classification suggests potential value beyond aesthetic appreciation. She attempted some form of soul examination during our first encounter, Naruto confirmed. Though my particular nature prevented complete assessment. Something shifted in Ryu's expression, not quite surprise but heightened attention. Few beings resist Freya's discernment. Your internal structure, must differ fundamentally from native entities. The observation approached dangerously close to Naruto's Jinchuriki nature without explicit mention. He considered how much to reveal about Kurama's presence, weighing tactical disclosure against security considerations. My world's energy systems operate differently from yours, he acknowledged carefully. Some aspects of my capabilities derive from partnerships that would be difficult to explain in local terminology. Ryu accepted the diplomatic phrasing without pressing further, professional courtesy between warriors who recognized necessity for maintaining certain operational secrets. Their conversation shifted toward practical considerations regarding Naruto's independent status and investigation options within Orario's complex political landscape. The guild maintains archives regarding dimensional anomalies dating back centuries, she informed him. Access typically requires specific research authorization or familia sponsorship, though your SSS classification might supersede standard restrictions. Amara mentioned similar research facilities, Naruto noted, connecting information sources. Though her approach seemed more academic than institutional. Amara Therios maintains independent status similar to your own, Ryu confirmed. Her research incorporates sources beyond guild documentation, particularly rigor. Theoretical applications rather than merely historical recording. The conversation paused briefly as Mia Grand approached their table, her movement surprisingly graceful despite her imposing stature. The proprietress studied Naruto with experienced assessment before addressing him directly. First time I've seen this one voluntarily share a meal with anyone, she commented, nodding toward Ryu. You must ask better questions than most, boy. Or provide better answers, Naruto suggested with respectful humor that acknowledged her obvious authority. Mia's expression remained stern, but something approximating approval flickered in her eyes. The hostess maintains neutrality through strength rather than weakness, she stated. Remember that distinction if you continue utilizing our establishment. The statement carried multiple meanings beneath its surface, acknowledgement of his capabilities, warning regarding conduct expectations, and subtle offer of continued access to the establishment's unique information ecosystem. Naruto recognized the significance of such access within Orario's complex political landscape. Understood and appreciated, he replied with appropriate seriousness. Quality information deserves respectful handling. Mia nodded once before departing, the brief interaction complete yet meaningful in establishing mutual recognition between individuals accustomed to assessing situations beyond surface appearances. As their meeting concluded, Ryuu provided a final piece of information that transcended factual exchange into something approaching personal concern. The dimensional disturbances will attract attention beyond familia politics, she stated, voice lowered despite their private location. Some entities view boundary weakening as opportunity rather than threat. Exercise particular caution when investigating anomalies outside guild jurisdiction. The warning carried weight beyond professional courtesy, suggesting personal experience with consequences of such phenomena. Naruto acknowledged this with appropriate gravity. I appreciate the perspective, he replied, recognizing the value of such insights from someone clearly familiar with operating outside conventional protection structures. And the conversation overall, information unrestricted by political filtering is increasingly rare in any world. Something almost resembling. A smile flickered briefly across Ryu's composed features. The hostess serves many purposes beyond mere sustenance. Return when your investigations yield results worth discussing. The invitation represented significant trust from someone obviously accustomed to maintaining careful distance from others. Naruto recognized its value both practically and personally, establishing a potential alliance based on mutual professional respect rather than political necessity. As he departed the hostess of fertility, navigating through Orario's evening streets with heightened awareness of continuing surveillance, Naruto reflected on the complex web of relationships and information beginning to form around him in this strange world. Paths forward were emerging through the uncertainty, connections set on genuine exchange rather than mere political positioning. Most encouraging was the recognition that despite fundamental differences between worlds, certain constants remained: professionals who valued truth over convenience, individuals who maintained principles despite systemic pressures, and the potential for genuine understanding across seemingly insurmountable differences. As Babel Tower loomed against the night sky, its illuminated structure dominating Orario's skyline, Naruto sensed the subtle pulse of energy emanating from deep within the dungeon below, rhythmic fluctuations that resonated with his own chakra in ways suggesting deeper connections between realms than surface appearances indicated. Whatever forces had transported him here, the pathway home likely lay through understanding those connections rather than merely mapping their manifestations. The whispers of power echoing through Orario's political landscape were merely surface indications of deeper currents flow. Wing between worlds, currents he was uniquely positioned to navigate through capabilities transcending conventional classification systems. The coming days would require careful balance between investigation, alliance building, and maintaining the independence necessary to pursue his primary objective of finding a path home. Yet as stars appeared above unfamiliar constellations, Naruto found himself appreciating the unexpected perspective this displacement offered, a chance to view familiar questions of power, responsibility and connection through the lens of an entirely different world with its own unique answers to universal questions. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, Echoes of Home. Moonlight filtered through unfamiliar constellations, casting silver patterns across the sparse furnishings of Naruto's newly acquired residence. The guild had expedited his independent housing arrangements, a modest apartment in Orario's central district that balanced privacy with accessibility. Strategic location rather than luxury defined the space. Defensible entry points, multiple evacuation routes, and proximity to major information hubs throughout the city. Naruto sat cross-legged on the wooden floor, deep in meditation as midnight approached. 7 shadow clones maintained identical postures throughout the apartment, each focused on different aspects of chakra harmonization with this world's natural energy. The distributed concentration technique, developed during post-war specialized training, allowed simultaneous calibration across multiple energy pathways. 3 days had passed since his guild assessment, each filled with carefully balanced activities, establishing his independent operational framework, investigating dimensional anomaly reports through guild archives, and navigating the increasingly complex political currents surrounding his presence in Orario. Throughout these external activities, a more fundamental process continued beneath the surface: adaptation of his chakra, a system to this world's fundamentally different energy patterns. As midnight approached, Naruto deepened his meditative state, seeking the familiar mental landscape where communication with Kurama typically occurred. The space materialized gradually, Not the instantaneous connection of previous years, but a fragmented assembly that revealed the strained nature of their bond across dimensional boundaries. The vast chamber with its massive gate appeared distorted, as if viewed through rippling water. "Kurama," Naruto called into the wavering space. "Can you hear me?" A rumbling vibration answered, not coherent speech but acknowledgement of presence. The massive fox's silhouette appeared intermittently through dimensional static, nine tails weaving patterns that seemed to stabilize the connection momentarily. "The connection's stronger than before," Naruto observed, hope rising cautiously. Something's changed in the barrier between worlds. The fox's massive eyes opened, crimson irises focusing with visible effort. When Kurama spoke, his voice reached Naruto in fragments, syllables dropping out like interference in a long-distance transmission. "Dimensional thinning, accelerating, chakra network destabilization, village perimeter." The massive fox gathered visible concentration, forcing clearer communication through sheer will. Kakashi and the others, searching, anchor points, your chakra signature pulses. "They're looking for me," Naruto interpreted, relief washing through him. "The connection between worlds is getting stronger." "Not stronger, more unstable," Kurama corrected, his image wavering violently before partially stabilizing. "Barriers breaking down, not just between our worlds, all dimensional boundaries." The implications sent a chill through Naruto. That explains the anomalies appearing here. Is Konoha in danger? Contained for now. Orochimaru's research, unexpected applications. The fox's form began fading as the connection weakened. Energy sign. Atturs matching yours. Appearing randomly, tracking backward. Find. Source of disturbance. Kurama, what caused this? Was it an attack, an accident? Naruto pressed, desperately seeking information before the connection failed. Ancient power. Awakening. Across all dimensions. The fox's final words barely reached him as the mental landscape dissolved into chaotic energy patterns. Not random, you were chosen. The connection shattered completely, leaving Naruto alone in darkness as his meditation collapsed. He opened his eyes to find his shadow clones looking at him with identical expressions of concern, each having experienced the partial connection simultaneously. "That was more information than we've gotten before," one clone noted, maintaining analytical detachment despite shared emotional response. "Konoha's actively searching, using our chakra signature as a tracking beacon." "But, chosen, for what?" Another clone questioned, focusing on Kurama's final fragmented message. "And by whom? Or what?" Naruto dispersed the clones, absorbing their perspectives while processing the accumulated information. The feedback loop created momentary disorientation as multiple analytical frameworks merged with his primary consciousness, a sensation he'd grown accustomed to during years of specialized training using the technique. Rising from his meditation posture, Naruto moved to the apartment's small balcony. Gazing toward Babel Tower rising against the night sky. The structure pulsed with subtle energy visible only through chakra-enhanced perception, rhythmic fluctuations suggesting something massive breathing beneath the city's surface. "The dungeon connects dimensional boundaries somehow," he murmured, connecting fragments from various information sources. "And whatever disrupted those boundaries affected multiple worlds simultaneously." Sleep, when it finally came hours later, brought dreams unlike any Naruto had experienced since arriving in Orario, vivid fragments of memory distorted through dimensional interference. He stood again at Konoha's perimeter, investigating reports of strange energy fluctuations affecting the village's security barrier. Kakashi moved beside him, Hokage robes billowing as they examined disturbed earth where phantom chakra signatures appeared and disappeared without pattern. The dimensional researchers from Snow Country reported similar phenomena last month, Kakashi stated, Sharingan exposed as he traced complex patterns invisible to normal perception. Energy signatures matching no known chakra type, appearing momentarily before re-dissolving back into ambient background. "It feels almost like natural energy," Naruto observed in the dream memory, sage mode activated to enhance perception. "But twisted somehow, like it's been filtered through something that changed its fundamental properties." They followed disturbance patterns to a clearing where the phenomena concentrated, a location that overlapped precisely with where Naruto later awakened in Orario. Dream logic distorted the chronology as Naruto simultaneously experienced investigating the disturbance and being transported by it, observer and participant merging as reality fractured around him. The last image before waking came with startling clarity, a massive seal array unlike any he'd encountered, composed of symbols combining familiar fuinjutsu elements with completely alien patterns. At the array's center stood a cloaked figure whose features remained obscured, hands forming unfamiliar signs as they manipulated energy patterns between worlds with terrifying precision. Naruto jolted awake at dawn, the dream memory still vivid despite returning consciousness. Creating a shadow clone without conscious thought, he directed it to transcribe the seal RRAY pattern while details remained fresh. The clone worked with focused intensity, brush moving across scroll material with precise strokes capturing the complex arrangement before memory could fade. That's not a standard transportation technique, Naruto observed, studying the emerging pattern. This combines elements from multiple sealing traditions with components I've never seen before. Like it was designed to identify specific chakra signatures across dimensional boundaries. The clone nodded grimly, like it was searching for someone particular. For us, the revelation aligned disturbingly with Kurama's fragmented message: you were chosen. Whatever force had transported Naruto between worlds, randomness appeared increasingly unlikely as explanation. Morning brought practical concerns that temporarily overshadowed metaphysical questions. The guild had requested Naruto's participation in a specialized dungeon expedition, officially classified as anomaly assessment, rather than standard exploration. The formal documentation delivered by messenger emphasized both the voluntary nature of the request and the significant information value potentially available through direct investigation. Naruto recognized the political positioning beneath the practical request. His participation would provide both valuable capabilities for the expedition and an opportunity for guild officials to observe his techniques in actual dungeon conditions rather than assessment simulations. The arrangement offered mutual benefits worth accepting despite the obvious observational agenda. After preparing appropriate equipment and creating shadow clones to continue research in his absence, Naruto proceeded to the designated meeting location near Babel Tower's public entrance. The expedition team assembled there represented a carefully balanced coalition of interests: guild researchers focused on anomaly documentation, representatives from neutral familias providing combat support, and specialized knowledge experts including Amara with her dimensional research equipment. Most surprising was Ryuu Lion's presence among the gathered team. The elven warrior acknowledged Naruto with a slight nod that conveyed neither warmth nor coldness, merely professional recognition between established counterparts. The guild requested independent combat specialists with deep floor experience. She explained succinctly when he approached. My contract with the hostess permits occasional expedition participation when specific expertise is required. I'm glad to have experienced support, Naruto replied sincerely. Especially from someone who recognizes distraction techniques in organizational briefings. The faintest hint of amusement flickered across Ryu's typically composed features, appreciation of his implicit acknowledgement that official expedition parameters likely concealed secondary objectives not included in formal documentation. The expedition leader, a senior Gwei LD researcher named Doran Arvis whose weathered features suggested decades of dungeon exploration, assembled the team for final briefing before descent. His presentation combined thorough operational planning with subtle recognition of the political undercurrents flowing beneath the surface mission. Our primary objective remains documentation of anomalous energy patterns appearing on the 12th through 15th floors, he explained, indicating mapped locations where disturbances had been reported. Secondary objectives include monster behavior assessment, crystalline formation analysis, and decorrelation with surface manifestations previously investigated. The unspoken objectives, observing Naruto's techniques in authentic dungeon conditions and potentially discovering connections to high-dimensional transportation, remained tactfully unmentioned despite being obvious to all involved. Standard expedition protocols apply regarding formation maintenance and communication procedures, Doran continued, addressing practical considerations with practiced efficiency. However, given the unpredictable nature of anomalous phenomena, specialized personnel are authorized to implement JUDGM end-based response adaptations when necessary. This carefully worded flexibility provision effectively granted Naruto, Ryuu, and other high-capability specialists operational freedom within the expedition framework, a significant concession from typically rigid guild protocols that revealed their practical prioritization of mission success over procedural conformity. Naruto appreciated the pragmatic approach. Any specific energy signatures I should be monitoring for comparison with surface manifestations? He inquired, establishing his cooperative intent while demonstrating relevant expertise. Previous recordings detected fluctuation patterns in these frequency ranges, Amara responded, providing a data crystal containing measurement parameters. Though your sensory capabilities may identify aspects our instruments cannot detect. The acknowledgement of his unique perceptual abilities represented growing acceptance of capabilities outside standard classification systems, a significant evolution from the skepticism that initially greeted his arrival in Orario. As final preparations concluded, Naruto found himself assigned to the expedition's vanguard alongside Ryuu, a tactical positioning that balanced his unknown dungeon experience with her established expertise navigating deeper floors. The arrangement provided optimal observation opportunities for both guild assessment and his own investigation objectives. The 12th through 15th floors host primarily mid-range monster varieties, Ryuu explained as they began their descent through Babel Tower's massive internal structure. Under normal circumstances, standardized threat protocols would be sufficient for experienced adventurers. However, anomalous energy patterns have been associated with unusual monster behavior patterns and variant manifestations. Similar to the dimensional boundary creatures we encountered outside the city walls, Naruto surmised, connecting previous experiences with current expectations. Precisely, Ryuu confirmed, though dungeon manifestations appear more stable, better integrated with this reality's fundamental properties than the transient surface variations. Their conversation continued as the expedition descended through upper dungeon levels, Ryuu providing practical context regarding dungeon mechanics, typical monster behaviors, and expedition protocols, while Naruto shared relevant observations from his world's dimensional research where applicable. The exchange transcended mere information transfer, establishing operational synchronization between fighters with complementary capabilities. Most fascinating were the fundamental differences in how each perceived energy patterns throughout the dungeon. Ryuu's fauna-enhanced senses detected variations in NSTER crystal frequencies and dungeon wall compositions, while Naruto's chakra-based perception identified underlying natural energy flows connecting seemingly separate manifestations into coherent systems. The entire dungeon functions as a single organism, Naruto observed as they passed through the 10th floor transition area. These architectural variations aren't random structural features, they are more like specialized organs performing different functions within a unified biological system. Ryuu considered this perspective thoughtfully. Ancient elven texts describe the dungeon as world's wound, a living response to some primordial injury inflicted upon the planet itself. Your biological system analogy aligns with traditional understanding predating modern guild classification systems. The perspective exchange continued as they progressed deeper, their professional rapport strengthening through shared observations and complementary analytical frameworks. Despite her typically reserved demeanor, Ryuu demonstrated unexpected depth of knowledge regarding historical dungeon phenomena, information clearly exceeding standard guild documentation. As they approached the 12th floor where anomaly investigations would begin in earnest, Naruto noticed subtle shifts in the dungeon's ambient energy patterns. Natural energy flowed differently here, currents twisting in unnatural configurations that reminded him of distortion patterns surrounding space-time ninjutsu applications. The boundary disturbances are stronger here, he informed the expedition team, shifting to enhanced sensory perception without fully entering sage mode, similar to surface manifestations but more structured, like the energies being deliberately channeled rather than randomly leaking between dimensions. Amara immediately adjusted her measurement equipment, recalibrating sensitivity parameters based on his observation. Fascinating. The frequency modulation shows distinctly artificial patterns rather than natural resonance. Almost like someone's trying to establish stable connection points between dimensional planes, Naruto completed, the pattern recognition triggering or relations with his dream memory of the mysterious seal array. Not random deterioration but deliberate manipulation. This revelation transformed the expedition's investigative focus. What had been classified as natural anomalies potentially resulting from Naruto's transportation now appeared more complex, possibly indicating intentional dimensional interference preceding his arrival rather than resulting from it. The team established a temporary research base at the 12th floor junction, deploying specialized equipment while combat specialists secured the perimeter against monster incursions. Naruto created shadow clones to extend their security coverage, stationing duplicates at key approach vectors while maintaining his primary focus on energy pattern analysis alongside Amara and guild researchers. These crystalline formations differ from standard dungeon materials, Amara observed, examining structures similar to those discovered at the surface manifestation site. The molecular structure incorporates elements not typically found in our world's periodic classification. Their conversion matrices, Naruto suggested, recognizing patterns similar to specialized chakra transformation devices developed in Snow Country, designed to translate energy between incompatible systems, like adapters between different power sources. As research progressed, Naruto became increasingly certain that his transportation between worlds represented one manifestation of broader dimensional manipulation rather than isolated incident. The patterns forming throughout the dungeon's twelfth floor corresponded with fragments of the seal array from his dream memory, components of a larger system partially implemented across multiple locations. Most concerning was the deliberate nature of these manifestations. The precise geometric arrangements and careful energy channeling suggested conscious design rather than random dimensional deterioration. Someone or something was systematic. Ally establishing connection points between worlds with concerning precision. Their investigation continued through carefully mapped sections of the 12th floor, documenting increasing concentration of anomalous formations as they approached the floor's central chamber. Throughout this progression, Naruto maintained sensory awareness beyond the expedition's immediate surroundings, monitoring distant energy fluctuations and monster movement patterns throughout the accessible area. Monster activity is unusually coordinated, he reported, detecting behavioral patterns inconsistent with guild documentation regarding typical dungeon ecology. They're avoiding the areas with highest anomaly concentrations while establishing perimeter formations around central approach vectors. Ryuu confirmed this assessment through her own observations. Deliberate containment patterns rather than territorial defense. Almost like they're under unified direction rather than acting on individual instinct. This unprecedented behavior raised serious concerns regarding expedition security. Standard dungeon protocols assumed predictable monster response patterns based on territorial imperatives and individual threat assessment. Coordinated activity suggesting hive mind behavior or external control introduced variables beyond contingency planning parameters. As they approached the central chamber here anomaly concentrations peaked according to survey data. Naruto detected a distinctive energy signature different from both dungeon ambient patterns and dimensional disturbance manifestations. T's new presence registered as consciously controlled power, someone actively manipulating energy flows within the anomaly field rather than merely observing natural phenomena. We're not alone down here, he informed the expedition leader quietly, indicating the central chamber ahead. Someone's already working with the dimensional anomalies, actively directing energy flows through the crystalline formations. Doran's expression tightened with concern. No other expedition teams are authorized at this level currently. Could it be independent adventurers ignoring guild restrictions? The energy. Why manipulation requires specialized knowledge beyond standard magical application? Naruto responded, assessing the sophisticated patterns detectable through his chakra senses. Whoever they are, they understand these dimensional anomalies better than we do. The expedition leader weighed security protocols against investigation objectives before making his decision. We'll proceed with caution. Primary combat specialists in advanced position with research personnel maintaining secure distance until situation assessment confirms safe approach parameters. This structured approach balanced professional thoroughness with appropriate caution, a decision-making framework Naruto respected despite his personal inclination toward more direct investigation. The vanguard formation reorganized within. Naruto and Ryuu taking point positions supported by guild security specialists in staggered deployment behind them. They advanced through increasingly distorted dungeon architecture, walls displaying UN natural crystalline growths while floor surfaces developed geometric patterns reminiscent of massive magic circles. The ambient temperature fluctuated unpredictably, creating momentary frost formations that immediately evaporated into steam without transitional states between extremes. As they reached the final approach corridor leading to the central chamber, Naruto detected significant energy concentration building ahead, power gathering for what felt like imminent activation rather than static maintenance. Whatever the unknown presence was doing with the dimensional anomalies, they appear to be reaching critical implementation phase. We need to accelerate, he advised with uncharacteristic urgency. They're activating something, channeling power through the entire formation network. Ryuu immediately adjusted her stance for rapid advance. Full approach or stealth insertion. Direct but controlled, Naruto decided, appreciating her immediate tactical adaptation. Speed priority with awareness maintenance. Whatever they're doing feels like it's reaching completion point. They moved forward with synchronized efficiency, Naruto's shinobi stealth techniques complementing Ryuu's adventurer experience navigating dungeon approach vectors. Their advance maintained optimal balance between speed and situational awareness, covering ground rapidly while continuously assessing potential threat variables throughout the approach corridor. What they discovered upon reaching the central chamber exceeded even their prepared expectations. The massive cavern had transformed from St. Andar dungeon architecture into something resembling a dimensional laboratory, crystalline formations arranged in precise geometric patterns spanning the entire space, pulsing with energy that visibly distorted the air around them. At the chamber's center stood a figure manipulating these energies with practiced precision, hands weaving complex patterns that directed power flows through the crystalline network with obvious expertise. Most striking was the figure's appearance, a woman whose features combined ethereal beauty with unsettling otherness. Her hair shifted between colors as if unable to maintain consistent manifestation in this reality, while her clothing incorporated elements from multiple cultural traditions not native to Orario. Most concerning were the symbols adorning her attire, patterns matching components of the seal array from Naruto's dream memory. Naruto signaled Ryuu to maintain position while he observed the unknown researcher's activities, assessing intentions or determining appropriate intervention approach. The woman continued her manipulations apparently unaware of their presence, focusing entirely on stabilizing energy flows throughout the crystal network surrounding her. As power concentrations approached critical threshold, reality itself began wavering within the chamber, dimensional boundaries thinning to transparency as images from other worlds flickered across the distorted space. Among these fragmentary visions, Naruto recognized familiar landscapes, Konoha's Hokage Monument, training grounds where Team 7 once gathered, the Great Naruto Bridge spanning distant waters. The emotional impact of these glimpses momentarily disrupted his tactical focus, homesickness surging through carefully maintained professional detachment. For the first time since arriving in Orario, Naruto fully confronted the possibility that these fragmented visions might represent his only remaining connection to the world he had known. That return might prove impossible despite all efforts. This momentary vulnerability passed quickly, professional discipline reasserting control as he refocused on the immediate situation. The dimensional researcher appeared to be reaching operation culmination, energy patterns stabilizing throughout the crystal network as boundary manifestations solidified into more coherent images rather than fragmentary glimpses. Before Naruto could determine optimal intervention timing, the decision was forcibly accelerated by external factors. Monster activity surrounding the chamber suddenly intensified, coordinated groups converging on their position with unprecedented organization. The security perimeter established by expedition support personnel came under simultaneous attack from multiple directions, communication crystal LS activating with urgent warning signals. "We need to move now," Ryuu advised, assessing the rapidly deteriorating tactical situation. "Whatever she's doing has triggered dungeon-wide monster respawn. Say patterns beyond containment capability." Naruto agreed with her assessment, further observation luxury sacrificed to immediate security necessities. They entered the chamber together, moving with synchronized efficiency that balanced speed with tactical positioning. The dimensional researcher detected their approach immediately despite focused concentration on her ongoing operation. Unlike startled interruption reaction, her response demonstrated composed adaptation, hands continuing precise manipulation sequences while attention expanded to include the newcomers. I wondered when observers would arrive, she stated. Voice carrying musical quality despite business-like tone. Though I expected guild intervention sooner given the energy magnitudes involved. Her gaze shifted specifically to Naruto, revealing eyes that changed color with each slight movement, iridescent variations suggesting imperfect manifestation within single-dimensional constraints. Especially after successfully tracking dimensional displacement patterns to their logical focal point. What exactly are you doing with these anomalies? Naruto inquired, maintaining non-threatening approach vector while positioning for potential intervention if necessary. Stabilizing rather than exploiting, she corrected, continuing energy flow adjustments throughout the crystal network. The boundary deterioration accelerates exponentially without controlled channeling. This array merely directs dimensional bleed through along established pathways rather than allowing random manifestation. The explanation contained technical accuracy Naruto recognized from his own world's dimensional research, yet omitted critical motivation elements. Who are you, and how do you possess this knowledge about cross-dimensional mechanics? A smile flickered across her features, neither warm nor cold but containing appreciation for direct questioning. Kara, dimensional stability specialist, among other qualifications. As our knowledge source. Let's simply acknowledge that cross-realm travel predates your arrival by considerable historical margin. This cryptic self-identification provided minimal concrete information ill confirming Naruto's suspicion that Orario contained individuals with specialized knowledge beyond official documentation. Before he could press for clarification, Ryuu interrupted with practical urgency. Monster convergence patterns are accelerating, she reported, attention divided between chamber activity and perimeter security alerts. The expedition team is implementing emergency extraction protocols. Whatever explanations matter should happen quickly. Kyra's expression shifted to genuine concern as she assessed the situation beyond her immediate operation. The dungeon responds defensively to dimensional manipulation, interpreting boundary stabilization as systemic threat requiring coordinated response. Your expedition triggered security protocols by investigating anomalies already under containment management. You were already working to stabilize these disturbances before we arrived, Naruto interpreted, connecting fragments of information into coherent assessment. Hitch means you've been tracking dimensional anomalies throughout Orario since before my arrival. Precisely. Kyra's hands completed a final sequence, energy flows throughout the crystal network TT-ling into stable configuration rather than active manipulation. Dimensional boundaries began deteriorating approximately 3 months ago, localized initially but expanding in geometric progression. Your transportation represented significant escalation rather than initiating incident. This confirmation aligned with Naruto's developing theory that his dimensional displacement was symptom-rather than cause of broader boundary destabilization affecting multiple worlds simultaneously. Before he could explore implications further, the tactical situation deteriorated dramatically. The chamber entrance exploded inward as monsters breached the corridor beyond, not standard dungeon varieties but crystalline-infused variants similar to those encountered during surface anomaly manifestations. IR-coordinated attack patterns demonstrated intelligence beyond instinctual behavior, targeting the crystal network with obvious intention to disrupt Kyra's stabilization array. They're targeting the stabilization matrix, Kara confirmed, shifting from research to defensive posture with practiced fluidity. Dungeon consciousness interprets dimensional stabilization as constraining threat to its evolutionary adaptation. Naruto processed implications immediately. The dungeon itself was actively working to maintain dimensional instability rather than merely responding defensively to external manipulation. This fundamentally changed understanding of what the dungeon actually represented within this world's cosmological framework. We need to protect the stabilization array, he determined. Tactical assessment immediately translating to action plan. Ryuu, coordinate with expedition security to establish evacuation corridor. I'll handle chamber defense with Kara. Ryuu acknowledged. The tactical division without hesitation, professional trust established through their earlier operational synchronization. She moved immediately to implement extraction coordination, communication CR. still activating to establish contact with expedition support personnel. Naruto created multiple shadow clones without hand signs, deploying duplicates in defensive formation around critical junction points within the crystal network. Which sections require priority protection? He asked Kara directly, focusing on immediate tactical necessities rather than larger cosmological implications. The primary stabilization nodes, she indicated, highlighting 7 critical formations within the larger network. Disruption to any would cascade throughout the entire system, potentially accelerating boundary deterioration beyond recovery threshold. With priorities established, they implemented coordinated defense against increasingly sophisticated monster attacks. Naruto's shadow clones maintained positional protection around critical nodes while his primary form and Kara addressed direct incursions with complementary combat techniques. Most fascinating was observing Kyra's fighting style, a hybrid approach incorporating elements from multiple cultural traditions not native to Orario. Her movements combined fluid grace with mathematical precision, each action simultaneously addressing immediate tactical necessity while maintaining perfect conservation of energy for sustained operation. The crystalline-infused monsters demonstrated disturbing adaptation capabilities, each wave incorporating tactical adjustments based on previous engagement outcomes. This evolutionary combat approach suggested intelligence beyond individual specimens, coordinated response orchestrated by central IZED consciousness rather than instinctual learning. The dungeon is actively directing them, Naruto observed between counter-offensive sequences, using them as specialized antibodies against IVED infection, namely our stabilization efforts. Precisely why permanent solution requires addressing root consciousness rather than merely symptoms, Kara confirmed, her fighting style shifting to accommodate emerging attack patterns with disturbing prescience. Though immediate priority remains evacuation security and array protection, their defensive operation continued with increasing intensity as monster variants evolved with each engagement cycle. Naruto found himself gradually incorporating more advanced techniques, chakra nature manipulation and sage energy enhancements becoming necessary as opposition complexity escalated beyond basic combat parameters. Throughout this escalation, Ryuu coordinated extraction operations with impressive efficiency, establishing secure evacuatio corridors while maintaining communication with both chamber defenders and retreating expedition personnel. Her tactical adaptability complemented Naruto's power projection capabilities, creating rational synergy that maximized effectiveness despite deteriorating circumstances. As the situation approached critical decision threshold, Naruto assessed remaining options with tactical clarity. Conventional defense approaches would eventually fail against infinitely evolving opposition, especially with stabilization array vulnerability creating constraining protection requirements. Alternative approach became necessary, one addressing fundamental rather than symptomatic aspects of the confrontation. I need to communicate directly with the dungeon consciousness, he determined, recognizing parallels with Jinchuriki harmonization techniques developed during the war. Establish understanding rather than opposition. Kyra's expression revealed surprised reassessment. Direct consciousness. Interface requires specialized dimensional perception capabilities beyond standard magical frameworks. Sage mode integration with natural energy systems, Naruto explained briefly, already preparing mental frameworks for the attempt. Similar to techniques used for communication with tailed beasts in my world. Understanding dawned in Kyra's expression. Your unique energetic composition, reason conventional fauna blessing couldn't categorize your capabilities. The dimensional transportation wasn't random selection but deliberate acquisition of specific interface capability. This perspective aligned disturbingly with Kurama's fragmentary message, you were chosen. Before Naruto could fully process implications, immediate tactical necessity forced implementation commitment. Maintain physical defense for 3 minutes, he instructed both Kara and his remaining shadow clones. I need complete concentration for interface initialization. Without waiting for acknowledgement, Naruto established central position within the chamber, adopting meditation posture that balanced physical stability with energetic receptivity. His consciousness expanded beyond individual perception, connecting with natural energy flows throughout the dungeon with unprecedented integration depth. The sensation differed fundamentally from standard Sage mode application, this world's natural energy possessing qualitative differences requiring adaptation of traditional harmonization techniques. Where his world's natural energy flowed with organic cohesion, this realm's energy currents contain deliberate architectural elements, structured pathways rather than natural circulation systems. Pushing deeper into this structured energy network, Naruto encountered resistance unlike conventional opposition, consciousness defending itself against integration rather than merely resisting energy extraction. The dungeon itself possessed awareness beyond ecological intelligence, purpose-driven existence with defined operational parameters. Communication required translation across fundamentally different cognitive frameworks, bridging between human consciousness and something that experienced reality through distributed awareness rather than centralized perception. Naruto adapted techniques originally developed for communicating with Kurama before their partnership harmonized, creating conceptual interfaces where direct language proved inadequate. Through this painstaking process, understanding gradually formed, fragmentary initially but coalescing into coherent comprehension as translation methodologies refined through iterative improvement. What Naruto discovered defied conventional categorization within either world's conceptual frameworks. The dungeon existed as intentional creation rather than natural evolution, a massive containment and processing system designed to manage dimensional boundary integrity through controlled energy exchange between realms. Its monster generating function served regulatory purposes, creating conversion mechanisms transforming excess dimensional energy into physical manifestations that maintained system equilibrium. Most disturbing was recognizing recent operational parameter shifts. The system had begun prioritizing boundary dissolution rather than maintenance, actively working to increase permeability between dimensions rather than regulating stable separation. This fundamental directive change explained increased anomaly manifestations throughout Orario and beyond. Pushing deeper into system architecture awareness, Naruto encountered authorization frameworks governing operational parameters, command structures determining fundamental behavior patterns throughout the entire dungeon ecosystem. The recent directive change's origin aided from authority implementation beyond the dungeon's own consciousness, external control overriding original design parameters. Someone or something had reprogrammed the dungeon's fundamental purpose, say from dimensional boundary maintenance to controlled dissolution, transforming protective infrastructure into invasive bridgehead between worlds. Before Naruto could identify this external authority source, defensive systems activated throughout the dungeon consciousness, security protocols specifically designed to prevent exactly the type of investigation he was conducting. His awareness was forcibly ejected from the deeper system architecture, connection severing with disorienting abruptness. Physical consciousness returned with jarring transition, Naruto opening his eyes to find the chain. Our situation significantly deteriorated during his investigation trance. Monster incursions had escalated beyond conventional defensive capability, with only Kyra's increasingly desperate efforts and his shadow clone's sacrificial interceptions preventing complete stabilization array collapse. "We need to leave now," Ryuu announced from the chamber in trance, her typically composed expression showing genuine urgency. "Expedition security perimeter has collapsed completely. Extraction corridor remains viable for approximately 90 seconds before total monster convergence." Naruto assessed the situation with tactical clarity despite interface disorientation aftermath. The stabilization array had suffered partial damage during his consciousness exploration, compromising operational effectiveness beyond repair threshold without complete reconstruction, a process requiring resources and time unavailable under current circumstances. Controlled withdrawal, he decided, creating fresh shadow clones to replace depleted defenders. "Kara, can the array maintain minimal functionality without human operation?" "Approximately 12 hours of degraded stability enhancement," she confirmed. "Already implementing shutdown sequences that would maximize operational duration without active maintenance. Sufficient for organizational regrouping but requiring comprehensive intervention before dimensional bleeding accelerates beyond containment parameters." With priorities established, they implemented coordinated extraction, Naruto's shadow clones providing rear-guard defense while Ryuu secured forward progress through increasingly monster-saturated corridors. Kara moved between them, her dimensional manipulation abilities occasionally creating localized distortions that confused pursuing monsters long enough to maintain withdrawal momentum. Their retreat through dungeon levels demonstrated escalating systemic response, monster coordination increasing with each ascent level as the dungeon consciousness allocated increasing resources toward neutralizing what it now identified as primary threat to revised operational parameters. Throughout this tactical withdrawal, Naruto maintained partial sensory connection with the dungeon's energy systems, monitoring pursuit patterns while gathering additional information about architectural functioning beyond what his brief direct interface had revealed. The experience provided disturbing confirmation that recent operational changes represented deliberate external reprogramming rather than natural evolution or random malfunction. As they finally reached upper dungeon levels where guild reinforcements had established secure extraction perimeter, Naruto found opportunity for brief direct exchange with both Kara and Ryuu, the shared combat experience having established operational trust transcending their limited formal acquaintance. The dungeon isn't malfunctioning, he informed them quietly, ensuring conversation remained beyond monitoring range of guild personnel coordinating extraction logistics. Someone deliberately reprogrammed its fundamental operational parameters, transforming dimensional boundary maintenance SSS-TEM into controlled dissolution mechanism. Kyra's expression confirmed his assessment. The pattern recognition algorithms have been tracking suggested external influence rather than systemic evolution. But confirmation required deeper access than my capabilities permitted. Your direct interface achieved what theoretical modeling only suggested, which means coordinated response requires addressing source rather than symptoms. Ryuu concluded, her tactical assessment immediately focusing on operational implications rather than theoretical framework. Identifying whoever implemented direct IV changes rather than merely managing boundary deterioration consequences. Precisely, Naruto agreed, appreciating their immediate grasp of fundamental rather than superficial aspects. Though effective response requires better understanding of both the dungeon's original purpose and the motivations behind its reprogramming. Their conversation paused as they reached Babel Tower's main entrance. Emerging into Orario's daylight where expedition aftermath protocols immediately enveloped them in organizational procedures. Guild officials coordinated debriefing sequences while medical personnel assessed returning team members for injury or anomalous exposure effects. Throughout these procedural requirements, Naruto maintained awareness of significant observation directed toward their group from multiple sources throughout the gathered crowd. News of the expedition's emergency extraction had clearly spread throughout Orario's information networks, attracting attention from various factions interested in dimensional anomaly developments. Most concerning was identifying several observation points specifically focused on Kara rather than the expedition generally, individuals whose positioning and attention patterns suggested prior knowledge of her identity and activities rather than general curiosity about anomaly research. The dimensional specialist had attracted attention beyond guild official interest, suggesting her activities were monitored by factions with specific interest in boundary manipulation capabilities. As formal debriefing procedures concluded and team members dispersed toward their respective organizational affiliations, Naruto maintained casual proximity to both Kara and Ryuu, ensuring opportunity for continued exchange beyond official documentation requirements. This conversational continuation represented both tactical information gathering and genuine connection development with individuals whose specialized knowledge and operational capabilities complemented his own. The guild will classify this as standard anomaly documentation with unexpected monster response patterns, Ryuu observed as they moved away from official processing areas. Quote, institutional frameworks lack contextual understanding necessary for appropriate categorization. Deliberate classification limitation rather than merely knowledge constraint, Kara added, her perspective revealing cynicism regarding official information management protocols. Certain factions within Orario's power structure actively suppress dimensional research exceeding controlled parameters. Which explains your independent operation status rather than institutional affiliation, Naruto surmised, connecting organizational behavior patterns with individual positioning choices. Nold. GE containment through researcher isolation rather than direct suppression. Kyra's expression revealed surprised reassessment of his analytical capabilities. Your perception extends beyond combat. Applications into systemic power dynamics despite limited exposure to Orario's political landscape. Interesting adaptive capability. Diplomatic necessity during post-war reconstruction, Naruto explained. Referencing background without elaborate detail. Village alliance maintenance required understanding institutional behavior patterns beyond surface policy statements. Their conversation continued as they navigated through Orario's central district, ostensibly moving toward refresh facilities while actually establishing information exchange beyond official monitoring networks. Throughout this movement, Naruto maintained awareness of multiple observation points tracking their progress, some affiliated with recognized familias while others operated with concerning anonymity. Your dime. Scion-specific sensory capabilities confirmed suspicions regarding boundary deterioration acceleration timelines, Kara stated once they reached relative privacy within a small tea house whose architectural design created conversation spaces resistant to casual surveillance. System collapse projections now have empirical validation rather than merely theoretical modeling. How long before critical threshold? Naruto asked directly, prioritizing practical assessment over theoretical framework. Without intervention addressing root directive changes rather than merely symptom management. Ira considered with mathematical precision. Approximately 6 weeks before dimensional bleeding exceeds containment capability throughout Orario region. Global boundary integrity compromised roughly 2 weeks thereafter. The timeline created immediate priority reassessment. Theoretical investigation luxury transformed into practical intervention necessity by imminent catastrophic outcome proximity. We need better understanding of both who reprogrammed the dungeon's operational parameters and how to restore original functioning, Naruto determined, focusing on solution pathways rather than problem magnitude. Ancient records regarding dungeon original construction exist within restricted archives. Ryuu contributed unexpectedly. Her typically reserved information sharing expanded through established operational trust. Historical documentation predating current guild organizational structure, maintained through specialized preservation protocols beyond standard access frameworks. This revelation demonstrated trust development beyond professional courtesy. Sharing restricted knowledge represented significant relationship evolution beyond their initial guarded interaction. Naruto acknowledged this progression with appropriate seriousness. Access to original design documentation would provide essential context for understanding both intended functionality and vulnerable modification points, he confirmed. Recognizing both the information value and the trust represented by its sharing. Their strategic discussion continued through careful information exchange regarding available resources, access methodologies, and coordination frameworks necessary for addressing root causes rather than merely managing symptoms. Throughout this planning process, Naruto found himself increasingly appreciating both Kira's specialized knowledge and Ryu's practical operational experience, their complementary capabilities creating synergistic potential exceeding individual contribution possibilities. As afternoon progressed toward evening, their conversation necessarily shifted toward immediate next steps rather than comprehensive strategy development. Practical necessities read addressing before theoretical frameworks could translate into implemented solutions. I maintain research facilities near the library district containing dimensional monitoring equipment capable of tracking deterioration patterns throughout Orario region, Kara explained, providing communication crystal attuned to secure frequency. Continuous measurement will establish progression mapping essential for intervention timing optimization. The hostess maintains information collection networks throughout adventurer communities, Ryu added, her contribution balancing theoretical monitoring with practical intelligence gathering. Unusual monster behavior patterns or anomaly manifestations typically generate discussion preceding official documentation. Naruto appreciated both their professional contributions and the trust represented by resource sharing beyond required expedition cooperation. I've established research space within my residence for dimensional boundary analysis using techniques from my world. Cross-reference between methodologies might identify pattern recognition impossible through single system observation. Their temporary partnership thus established combination of theoretical analysis, practical intelligence gathering, and cross-dimensional perspective that created investigation capability exceeding any single faction within Orario's knowledge ecosystem. The arrangement represented significant evolution from Naruto's initial isolation upon arriving in this world, establishing connection framework based on shared objectives rather than merely political expediency. As they prepared to separate toward individual responsibilities, Ryuu surprised both Naruto and herself with unexpected invitation extension. The hostess maintains private residence facilities for staff requiring accommodation between operational assignments. If your current location experiences excessive observation pressure, alternative arrangements could be implemented without official documentation requirements. The offer represented significant trust development beyond professional courtesy, establishing personal connection potential extending beyond immediate operational necessity. Naruto acknowledged this with appropriate seriousness rather than casual acceptance. "I appreciate both the practical consideration and the trust it represents," he responded sincerely. "My current arrangements provide adequate functionality, but knowing alternative options exist creates valuable contingency framework." Something approximating a genuine smile briefly transformed Ryuu's typically composed features, acknowledgement of understood subtext regarding relationship development beyond immediate operational parameters. This momentary expression revealed personality depth beneath professional exterior that Naruto found surprisingly compelling. Their departure from the tea house occurred with carefully staggered timing, operational security consciousness preventing obvious connection patterns that might attract undesired observation attention. Naruto remained temporarily after the others departed, using the opportunity for private reflection regarding both immediate situation developments and broader implications for his interdimensional circumstances. Most significant was recognizing the dungeon's true nature as dimensional boundary maintenance infrastructure rather than merely monster-generating ecological phenomenon. This fundamental reassessment transformed his understanding of both Orario's functional relationship with other worlds and potential pathways toward returning to his own. If the dungeon represented intentionally designed dimensional management system, its current reprogramming toward boundary dissolution rather than maintenance explained both his transportation between worlds and the increasing anomaly manifestations throughout Orario region. Addressing this root cause rather than merely adapting to displacement consequences offered potential resolution pathway previously unavailable through limited understanding. Equally important was the relationship development with both Ryuu and Kara, establishing connection framework based on mutual respect and complementary capabilities rather than merely circumstantial proximity. These relationships represented significant evolution from initial isolation upon arriving in this unfamiliar world, creating support network essential for addressing complex interdimensional challenges beyond individual capability resolution. As evening approached and Naruto finally departed the tea house, he maintained heightened awareness of continuing observation from multiple sources throughout his movement through Orario's central district. The political implications of his involvement with DanMachi anomaly investigation had clearly intensified following the expedition's dramatic conclusion, attracting attention from factions previously maintaining cautious assessment rather than active surveillance. Most concerning was identifying previously unnoticed observation points implementing sophisticated techniques beyond standard guild or familiar methodologies, individuals whose positioning and attention patterns suggested specialized training in surveillance operations rather than merely curious interest or political monitoring. Someone beyond established Orario power structures had developed specific interest in his activities and associations. Upon returning to his residence, Naruto immediately implemented comprehensive security assessment protocols, shadow clones systematically examining both physical premises and surrounding observation positions while his primary form established meditation posture for detailed chakra environment analysis. The combined approach revealed earning developments beyond expected political interest intensification. Most significant was discovering subtle energy pattern alterations throughout his residence's ambient environment, changes someone had implemented sophisticated monitoring techniques during his absence. Unlike conventional magical surveillance methods documented in guild security briefings, these alterations operate through dimensional frequency manipulation rather than standard energy projection, technology beyond Orario's established capability frameworks. Someone with advanced dimensional manipulation knowledge has specifically targeted our residence, Naruto informed the shadow clone implementing physical security assessment. Implementation methodology suggests capabilities similar to Kyra's but with distinct application philosophy. monitoring rather than stabilization focus. Potentially connected to whoever reprogrammed the dungeon's operational parameters, the clone suggested, connecting Ava. Eye label information points into potential pattern recognition. Both demonstrations indicate dimensional manipulation expertise beyond established Orario knowledge frameworks. This assessment aligned with emerging understanding regarding the broader situation, his dimensional displacement representing component within larger operational framework rather than isolated incident. The growing evidence suggested orchestrated implementation rather than random circumstance, with his specific transportation potentially serving intentional purpose within comprehensive strategy. As Naruto cleared the monitoring alterations through specialized chakra disruption techniques, he contemplated implications regarding both immediate security requirements and broader strategic positioning. Someone with ADVA NCED dimensional knowledge had specifically targeted him following the expedition's direct interface with dungeon consciousness, suggesting his activities had attracted attention from whoever implemented the system's operational parameter changes. The situation had evolved beyond adaptation to circumstantial displacement into direct engagement with whoever orchestrated interdimensional boundary dissolution. This transformation created both increased danger and potential opportunity. Opposition attention indicating impact significance while simultaneously providing investigation pathway toward identifying responsible entities. Following security restoration, Naruto attempted another meditative connection with Kurama, seeking both updated information regarding Konoha's situation developments and potential perspective regarding dungeon consciousness interface discoveries. The connection established with greater stability than previous attempts. Dimensional boundary thinning paradoxically facilitating communication despite creating broader systemic problems. Been tracking your chakra fluctuations. Kurama's voice materialized with greater clarity than previous connections, though still interrupted by dimensional interference. Similar disturbances appearing throughout elemental nations, connected through geometric patterns. The dungeon is a dimensional boundary management system, Naruto explained rapidly. Maximizing information transfer during stable connection period. Someone reprogrammed its operational parameters from stability maintenance to controlled dissolution. Similar architectural systems might exist in our world without recognized function identification. Kurama's massive form stabilized within their shared mental landscape, clarity improving as conversation progressed. Orochimaru identified ancient structures throughout elemental nations, previously classified as ceremonial remnants, actually form networks similar to chakra pathway system on planetary scale. The information confirmed emerging theory regarding coordinated multidimensional operation rather than isolated local manipulation. The boundary dissolution is happening simultaneously across multiple worlds, using existing infrastructure reprogrammed toward new operational objectives. Kakashi has mobilized joint village research teams, soon as ancient texts contain partial documentation. Regarding dimensional boundary maintenance systems, the connection began deteriorating despite Kurama's efforts to maintain stability. Someone is systematically dismantling separation between dimensions, creating consolidated reality framework rather than distinct worlds. The implications transcended even worst-case assessments, not merely dimensional bleeding but complete boundary elimination. Creating unified reality containing previously separate worlds. Such fundamental cosmological restructuring would create incalculable consequences for all affected dimensions. We need to identify whoever initiated this process. Naruto pressed as connection stability diminished. Have you found anything indicating who might possess both capability and motivation for such comprehensive dimensional manipulation? Ancient Prophecies Reference, Convergence Orchestrator, predating current civilization development. Kurama's form began dissolving into dimensional static despite obvious concentration effort. Descriptions match fragmentary visions you experienced during transportation, cloaked figure implementing seal arrays. The connection collapsed completely before additional information transfer could occur, leaving Naruto with tantalizing fragments rather than comprehensive understanding. Nevertheless, the exchange provided critical confirmation regarding coordinated multidimensional nature of the boundary dissolution process, operations implemented simultaneously across multiple worlds rather than merely localized manipulation. Rising from meditation, Naruto processed implications regarding both immediate investigation priorities and broader strategic positioning. The dimensional boundary dissolution represented existential threat transcending personal displacement conc. Earns. Potential catastrophe affecting multiple worlds simultaneously rather than merely individual transportation inconvenience. This understanding transformed his operational framework from primarily seeking return methodology to addressing fundamental threat potentially affecting both his original world and current location simultaneously. Personal objectives necessarily expanded to include SSS-M-level intervention addressing root causes rather than merely symptom management. As night settled over Orario, Naruto created shadow clones to implement parallel research streams investigating different aspects of the emerging situation. Some focused on dimensional mechanics documentation within guild archives, others analyzing dungeon architectural functioning based on expedition observations. While additional duplicates continued transcribing the dream memory seal array for pattern analysis comparison with discovered anomaly formations. The distributed cognitive approach maximized information processing capability while maintaining comprehensive security awareness throughout his residence and surrounding observation positions. This methodology, developed during post-war specialized training programs, allowed simultaneous progress across multiple investigation vectors despite limited time resources. Throughout this intensive research process, Naruto maintained awareness of his emotional response to the situation's evolving implications. The growing evidence suggesting orchestrated dimensional manipulation rather than random transportation accident created complex psychological impacts beyond tactical consideration requirements. Most significant was confronting the possibility that return to his original world might prove impossible regardless of effort investment or null DGE acquisition. That fundamental reality restructuring might eliminate distinct dimensional separation permanently rather than merely creating temporary displacement. This prospect created genuine grief response requiring acknowledgement rather than merely suppression beneath tactical focus. Naruto paused his analytical activities, allowing emotional processing space necessary for psychological integration rather than compartmentalization. The potential permanent separation from everyone and everything familiar, from precious people who defined his life's meaning beyond merely functional role fulfillment, created profound loss requiring genuine mourning rather than merely strategic adaptation. I might never see any of them again, he acknowledged aloud, giving voice to fear typically contained beneath determined optimism. Sakura, Kakashi, Shikamaru, Hinata, Gaara, everyone who shared that journey from beginning to now. Everything we built together after so much sacrifice. The verbalization released emotional pressure accumulated since arrival, grief, loneliness, and disorientation previously subordinated to immediate survival and adaptation requirements. Tears came without resistance. Honest emotional response to potential permanent loss rather than merely temporary separation. This emotional acknowledgement paradoxically strengthened rather than weakened operational resolve, integrating personal motivation with strategic necessity rather than compartmentalizing them as separate consideration frameworks. Addressing the dimensional boundary dissolution became simultaneous. Why personal objective and universal necessity? Protecting both specific precious people and general multidimensional stability through unified purpose rather than separated motivational structures. As emotional integration progressed, Naruto became aware of subtle energy fluctuation outside his residence, presence approaching with deliberate stealth rather than casual movement. Creating shadow clone. To maintain apparent meditation posture, he positioned himself for potential defensive response while identifying the approaching visitor. Ryuu lion materialized from evening shadows with characteristic fluid movement, approaching his residence with obvious awareness of surveillance positions throughout surrounding areas. Her approach methodology demonstrated both professional caution and urgent purpose, balancing operational security with communication necessity through optimized compromise methodology. Naruto opened the door before she could announce presence, acknowledging both her arrival and his awareness of approach vectors simultaneously. Security precautions suggest urgency beyond scheduled information exchange parameters. The hostess information networks identified unusual activity patterns throughout multiple familiar research divisions, Ryuu explained without preamble, entering with efficient movement that minimized external exposure duration. Coordinated Initiative S, pacifically targeting historical documentation regarding dungeon original construction and function. Someone else is investigating the same information we prioritized following the expedition, Naruto interpreted, immediately grasping strategic implications, with resource allocation suggesting organized response rather than merely curious research. Precisely. Ryu's typically composed EXPR. Eshin revealed genuine concern beneath professional detachment. Multiple familias simultaneously mobilizing specialized knowledge acquisition teams despite traditionally competitive information management protocols. Coordination methodology suggests external direction transcending established interfamilia rivalry frameworks. The pattern indicated orchestrated response to their expedition disk. Ovaries. Someone with influence across traditionally separate organizational structures specifically targeting information they had identified as critical following dungeon consciousness interface. T.'s coordinated counter-research initiative confirmed their investigation had attracted attention from whoever implemented the dimensional boundary dissolution program. They're attempting to restrict access to original design documentation before we can establish baseline functionality parameters, Naruto concluded, connecting tactical indicators to strategic implications. Which confirms both the documentation's existence and its value for potentially restoring original operational directives. Ryuu nodded confirmation. The hostess maintains access pathways to restricted archives through SSS-Rank contractual arrangements predating current guild administrative frameworks. Temporary opportunity exists for documentation acquisition before comprehensive access restriction implementation completes. The situation created immediate tactical necessity transcending scheduled investigation progression. Opportunity requiring immediate response despite incomplete preparation or comprehensive security arrangement establishment. Naruto assessed available resources against operational requirements with practiced efficiency. How many people can access these restricted archives without attracting institutional attention? He inquired, already mentally formulating tactical approach options. 2 maximum, myself through established access protocols and 1 additional through temporary authorization justification. Ryuu explained with precise operational detail. Time window approximately 4 hours before coordinated restriction implementation achieves comprehensive coverage. The constraints created clear tactical framework, minimal team composition with severe time limitation requiring focused objective prioritization rather than comprehensive documentation acquisition. Naruto immediately adjusted strategic planning to accommodate operational realities. We focus exclusively on original design documentation and operational parameter specifications, he determined, priority. Zing critical information components within available acquisition capacity. Implementation details and theoretical framework documentation becomes secondary objective if time permits after primary acquisition. Ryuu nodded agreement with his tactical assessment. The access point requires movement through multiple guild security layers. Your shadow replication capability could potentially address surveillance node neutralization without alerting central monitoring systems. The immediate operational synchronization demonstrated relationship evolution beyond initial professional courtesy, established trust enabling direct capability integration discussion without excessive explanation requirements or verification protocols. Naruto acknowledged this progression with appropriate seriousness while maintaining tactical focus. We'll need to inform Kara regarding adjustment to investigation timeline, he noted, creating shadow clones specifically assigned to secure communication implementation. Her dimensional monitoring equipment might identify potential interference patterns during documentation acquisition operation. With tactical framework established, they immediately began implementation preparation. Ryuu providing detailed facility mapping information while Naruto prepared specialized infiltration techniques adapted for Orario's magical surveillance systems rather than world's chakra-based security infrastructure. The collaborative preparation demonstrated complementary capability integration creating operational potential exceeding individual contribution possibility. As they finalized approach methodology, Naruto became aware of Ryu's subtle observation beyond mere tactical coordination. Assessment containing elements transcending professional capability evaluation. Her typically composed expression revealed momentary openness suggesting personal consideration beyond operational necessity. You adjusted strategic priorities immediately upon receiving new information. She observed during brief preparation pause. Without attachment to previously established methodology despite significant investment. Adaptability exceeding typical adventurer respawn. Say patterns even among high-level specialists. Naruto recognized the assessment contained elements beyond tactical appreciation, personal observation regarding operational philosophy rather than merely technical capability evaluation. Rigid adherence to established plans despite changing circumstances creates failure vulnerability exceeding tactical improvisation risks. A perspective develope. Through experience rather than merely theoretical understanding, Ryuu noted with unexpected perceptiveness. Lessons purchased through significant cost rather than merely academic acquisition. Observation approached personal history territory typically maintained behind professional interaction boundaries. Recognition of shared experience patterns despite different specific contexts. Naruto acknowledged this tentative personal connection development with appropriate seriousness rather than casual dismissal. War teaches adaptation priorities more effectively than training simulations, he confirmed. Offering personal context without elaborate detail, particularly when responsibility extends beyond individual survival to include others depending on your decisions. Something shift. In Ryu's expression, recognition of shared experience beyond merely parallel development. The weight of others' survival depending on your judgment changes decision framework fundamentally rather than merely quantitatively. This momentary personal exchange amid tactical preparation demonstrated relationship development transcending merely operational coordination, establishing connection bond. Edon recognized experiential similarity despite different specific contexts. The progression created foundation for trust beyond professional respect, enhancing both immediate operational potential and longer-term collaborative possibilities. As final preparation concluded and departure time approached, Naruto implemented comprehensive security protocols throughout his residence, Shadow Clones Ma. Maintaining surveillance countermeasures while specialized sealing techniques established perimeter protection beyond local methodological expectations. The security implementation balanced immediate protection requirements with longer-term monitoring capability maintenance, ensuring both physical premise security and intelligence gathering continuation during his absence. Their departure utilized specialized stealth methodology combining Ryu's adventurer infiltration techniques with Naruto's shinobi movement disciplines, creating approach vectors resistant to standard surveillance systems throughout Orario's central district. The complementary capability integration demonstrated practical synergy beyond theoretical compatibility, with each adapting individual methodologies to enhance combi net effectiveness rather than merely operating in parallel. As they approached the guild headquarters containing restricted archive access points, Naruto sensed the weight of historical significance. Beyond merely immediate tactical objectives, whatever documentation they discovered would potentially provide understanding regarding not only current dimensional boundary dissolution but fundamental aspects of this world's cosmological infrastructure development, context essential for addressing root causes rather than merely managing symptoms. The archive infiltration represented critical inflect on point within his interdimensional experience, transition from passive displacement adaptation to active intervention addressing foundational causes potentially affecting multiple worlds simultaneously. Whatever they discovered would inevitably transform understanding beyond merely practical return methodology identification. The echoes of home reaching him through thinning dimensional boundaries now carried implications transcending personal displacement concerns, representing connection between worlds facing shared threat requiring coordinated response rather than merely separated realities experiencing isolated phenomena. His unique position spanning multiple dimensional frameworks created both responsibility and opportunity exceeding individual circumstance adaptation. As they prepared to breach the first security layer protecting restricted archives, Naruto felt momentary connection with everyone precious to him across dimensional separation, not merely emotional association tangible energetic resonance suggesting fundamental connections transcending physical proximity requirements. Whatever orchestrated the dimensional boundary dissolution had inadvertently strengthened these connections through the very process intended to fundamentally restructure reality itself. Ready? Ryuu inquired quietly, final preparation complete as they positioned for synchronized infiltration sequence initiation. Ready, Naruto confirmed, resolve strengthened through integrated purpose connecting personal motivation with universal necessity. Whatever they discovered within those Ancient records would inevitably transform understanding beyond merely immediate tactical utility, providing context essential for addressing the threat facing not only his original home but all worlds affected by the dimensional convergence process. The archives awaited, containing answers that would potentially illuminate pathways forward through uncertainty currently obscuring comprehensive understanding. Whatever orchestrated the dimensional boundary dissolution had initiated process affecting countless lives across multiple worlds, intervention addressing fundamental causes rather than mere Ely's symptoms had become necessity transcending personal circumstances. With shared purpose and complementary capabilities, they moved forward into the Guild's restricted archives, seeking understanding. Essential for protecting everything precious regardless of which world contained it. Chapter 3 End. The end. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.